weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeit einheimst komm, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst komm, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst komm, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is where we watch the real radical revolutionary socialists, the farthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian. If you want to know who is pushing critical race theory into schools, it is the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who is pushing gender ideology into schools, it is the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who is trying to take away your parental rights, it's the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who's trying to abolish the police, defund the police, decriminalize everything, basically make it impossible to arrest someone or put people in jail for anything, it is the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. All of the crazy ideas that you see in the world today, no, are not coming from George Soros or Klaus Schwab or the WEF. I'm not saying they're not a problem. They're just an entirely different problem. The crazy stuff that you see happening in the United States is coming from the activists that we watch on Socialism Saturday. And today what we're going to be doing is we're actually doing a little bit of a throwback. Now, hang on one sec. Hang on. I forgot to pull something up. Oh no, I'm always unprepared. Even when I'm 10 minutes late for Socialism Saturday, I'm always unprepared for Socialism Saturday. All right, I pulled it up. Okay. The people that we are watching tonight now, I want to just do a little bit of a quiz so we can see how long some of you have been around. Because some of you have been watching Socialism Saturday with me since the beginning, and some of you are newer. And there's nothing wrong with being newer. Nothing wrong with that at all. But was anyone around for Socialism Saturday when we watched this presentation the first time? Because the thing of it is we started watching this stuff and really digging into it around a year and a half ago. I had been watching leftist trainings and diversity trainings and classroom exercises for about a year and a half before that, because I started doing this in 2021. And then about a year and a half ago, we really dug in on, we started to figure out who the real socialist activists were around a year and a half ago. And that's when we really dug into this stuff. And this was one of the first presentations that we ever watched for Socialism Saturday. Akshay remembers them. Yup. Carol remembers them. Yes, John. This is the presentation where they were talking about the use of testosterone as a party drug. Yeah, I think you were here too, Judy. Reagan remembers this one. Brooklyn remembers this one. Yup. Elena was here. Blast from the past. So why are we going to watch this again? That was your first. Oh, this is my. Okay, Murphy's Pool. All right. So why are we watching this again? Because in the year and a half, because they said some crazy stuff in this presentation. This was one of the first presentations we watched where they were like really saying the quiet part out loud. Because this was just like and these are all radical revolutionary socialists. These two co-authored or co-edited the book Transgender Marxism. She follows me on Twitter. Jules Gleason follows me on Twitter. I wonder if Jules is watching. Hi, Jules. Jules, you want to come on my channel? She started following me on Twitter like a couple months ago or something. And I was like, I DM'd her and I was like, why are you following me on Twitter? I mean, I am following her on Twitter, so maybe it's just one of those reciprocal things. But maybe Jules can be like the new Sophie. Maybe we can get Jules on my channel before we get Sophie on my channel. That'd be pretty great. Anyway, this presentation has always kind of stuck with me. And I've never gone back and rewatched it because in the year and a half that we've been watching Socialism, we have learned so much. And I want to start going back and rewatching some of the queer Marxist stuff because I'm going to launch the next level of How to Speak Socialist. And the next level of How to Speak Socialist is going to have like a heavy emphasis on queer Marxism and that sort of stuff, the stuff that's all responsible for gender ideology. And so what I want to do, because I was just dicking around with a lot of this stuff back in the day when we first started it, I want to go back and see how many clips can I get that we wouldn't have gotten before? How much more information can we get out of this presentation that we wouldn't have gotten before? So we'll see. Liquid Marble says, in your viewing list, Carlin, there's a presentation titled Trans Liberation Will Liberate Everyone. Is that on here? Let's see. We've watched this presentation. This presentation, one of the people in it was on drugs. That's got Jules and Jules. We got to watch this one at some point. Let's see. I do want to rewatch this one at some point. This one, Sharon. Okay, let me put Sharon in the... No, I want to do watch later. Why can't I do watch later? It's not letting me do watch later. Hang on. Let me save it, YouTube. This looks like one of those things though where it's like a YouTuber thing more than it is like a real socialist thing. I don't know. I saved it in my watch list. We'll see. Good spot. Anyway, so this is the presentation we're going to be watching today. It is called Trans Liberation, and it's on this little YouTube channel called Rabbles of the World. Now, we've watched other stuff off this YouTube. They actually haven't posted content on this channel in a couple years, but we've watched other stuff because also on Rabbles of the World, we have Emmy O'Brien, who is one of our favorite Abolish the Family Socialists. I would like to watch that. I don't even know if we watched that. We've got Sophie. Sophie has been on Rabbles of the World. There's some other queer Marxist stuff. So they have other stuff I'd like to go back and watch as well. But I really want to watch this presentation again. Can we watch the Haymarket book Cop City on Monday? Is it like a live thing? Like, are they doing it live? Let me see. This one? Oh, shit. Tate, and that's a good fun. Well, no, that's tomorrow. They're doing it live tomorrow. Should we do... I'm not making any promises. Should we do a live stream snipe of Haymarket Books tomorrow? Haymarket Books just loves it when I snipe their streams. And when we go and ask questions in the chat, Haymarket Books just loves it. When I feel like I'm helping to elevate Haymarket Books' message out to the world. And I feel like we're doing them a favor when we go into their chat and we ask them good questions. I don't know. Well, yes, I know. Haymarket Books banned me. They banned me on 2 accounts. I never even said anything in their chat. I couldn't believe it when Haymarket Books banned me. Oh no, they disabled it. They preemptively disabled the chat. Haymarket Books hates us. I don't know why they hate us. Literally all we do is show their content. I don't know. We'll see, Tayton. We'll see. I'll have to think about it. All right. We'll see. Anyway, I don't even know if there's much of a description of this one. In this video, Ira, Jules, L, and K reflect on the meaning of trans liberation. Pop quiz for the chat. What does trans liberation mean? They cover questions surrounding gender abolition, bodily autonomy, theory and praxis, and the communist horizon. And then we've got all their social media, and we've got other resources as well. And so that's what we're going to be watching. That's what we're going to be watching tonight, guys. But before we dig into that, I have a couple orders of business, and I'm going to take a point of personal privilege before we get started tonight. So what does trans liberation mean? What is we wouldn't have been able to answer this question a year and a half ago. Trans liberation means liberate from the gender binary. Liberate from the gender binary. When you liberate from the gender binary, you liberate from capitalism. Freedom from capitalism. Freedom from private property and capitalism, specifically by abolishing the gender binary. Free from the gender binary. Can we all agree that Haymarket are good comrades? Oh, Haymarket are the best comrades. The best. Liberate from the evils of capitalism. To free from the gender binary, to be liberated from the oppression of capitalism. No, Haymarket Books doesn't want to be in solidarity with us. They don't want, we are not, Milo, we are not good comrades. We are out of status. Exactly. All right. So we got a couple orders of business, and I am taking a point of personal privilege that has nothing to do with socialism, but I have something to say. All right. And so if anyone objects to me taking a brief, like 5-minute point of personal privilege, like air your objections right now in the chat. And then once we do my housekeeping, and then we do my point of personal privilege, then we're going to get into the presentation. So if you're not interested in any of that, go get a beer, go get a snack. I have a communist beer that I didn't realize was a communist beer when I bought it yesterday. And then I was looking at the can, and it said it was made by a collective. And we all know that collective is word for communist, and it's in Brooklyn. So I was distracted by the snake on the beer can, and I didn't notice that I accidentally bought a socialist beer. But then I was like, Socialism Saturday. It's fine. Whatever. All right. So the first order of business is this. Over on my Substack, which is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com, you can find the initial launch of my socialist dictionary. Now, this is not the final version, okay? This is just something I wanted to get up, to have it up, and then we're going to keep adding to it over time. So I have a big long-term plan for this, but I wanted to have something up that people could actually look at and reference, especially if they're new. So you can head over to Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com, and find the Socialist Dictionary right now. And what I did is I went through and I made really, really short definitions. We're not doing like what James Lindsay's doing on New Discourses with like a 10-page essay about each definition. I'm going as short and to the point as possible. Brevity is better. Plain English is better. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is to get it to the most simple possible explanation based off of all of the hours of this stuff that we've watched. Well, there's a Plague Doctor for February. There's not one for March yet, because it's not March yet, but there'll be one for March. Don't worry, Sassy. Don't worry. I'll show you the Plague Doctor for February in a second. So what I've done is I went through all of the main words that you guys need to know, to include like the basics like socialist and like, private property and gender binary and stuff like that. And I gave a brief description, and I also made graphics for each of them. And the intent of these graphics is I want to give you guys something that you can share on social media. I want to give you guys something that you can reference, that you can easily copy, paste, share. So this is just as much for, the goal of this is to use it to teach people, but I can't be the only one using it to teach people. You guys also have to use it to teach people, because what we've learned over the last couple of weeks is none of the influencers actually care about any of this stuff, and they're not actually doing it to teach. They're just doing it to hear themselves talk. And so I'm going to create resources like this that are just simple, that are to the point, that are visually good. I think like that's one of I'm going to make a t-shirt out of this one. I love this one. This one came out so good. So, and I have long-term plans for this as well, that I'm not going to talk about right now. But let me just say that my supporter community is working on a massive propaganda project right now. We're creating some cool stuff. We're creating propaganda. We're creating zines. Don't be surprised if you wake up one day and you look in the newspaper and you find that a queer coffee shop has had an entire mass of flyers posted on the front of it overnight. I'm just saying. New Discourses doesn't even have social reproduction theory in the dictionary because James Lindsay hasn't covered social reproduction theory, even though James Lindsay is lying and saying that he has when he has not. And James Lindsay thinks we're all too stupid to know that he has not covered social reproduction theory. And James Lindsay blocked Tayton on Twitter for pointing out that he should really cover social reproduction theory. And if you don't know what social reproduction theory is, stick around for a while. We will teach you what social reproduction theory is and why it's important and why it is driving all of the attacks on parental rights today. We will teach you the things that James Lindsay will not teach you because the MILFs for Liberty won't allow him to. I'm not bitter or anything. Anyway, guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, head over to the Substack and sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys are the funders of everything that I'm doing. I'm completely grassroots funded by you. Can't do it without you, and I really appreciate it. Another way you can fund the work I'm doing is by heading over to the Unwoke Art store, which is unwokeart.com, where I sell all my sweet merch. And we do have a special right now because Bot, this is the only design in the store that I didn't do because Bot did such a great job on it. And she told me I could have it. And I said, thank you. You can have whatever free merch you want. Because I love this design so much. We have the 4 goals of the woke left design in the Unwoke Art store. Finally, this is the most requested design that I've ever had. You guys have been telling me for years that I need to make at least a year. I've only had the merch store for a year. So like you guys have been telling me for a year since I launched the merch store, you need to make a 4 goals of the woke left t-shirt. And I'm like, that's a lot of words. I don't know how to do that. I was always thinking about it, but Bot made the most perfect design that I've ever seen, and I fell in love with it. And I said, Bot, you need to put that on a t-shirt. And Bot said, I don't want to. You can have it. And I was like, okay. So now we have this in the Unwoke Art store, and you can get it on t-shirts, hoodies. You can even get it on like the zip hoodie, which is like the hoodie that I wear. I'm getting one of these. I have this hoodie with a different design on it, but I'm definitely getting one of these. You can even get it on a pint glass if you want to have some beer as you are pondering your 4 goals of the woke left. And for the next week or so, until the end of the month, you can get all of this for 25% off. Once we hit into March, the prices will go back up to the normal price, but so you can only get it for 25% off until the end of February. And so if you guys want it, pick it up. A lot of you guys have been. This is quickly on its way to becoming one of the most popular things I've ever sold in the store. And it's only been up for like a couple days. So I appreciate it, Bot. Shout out to you. Bot is the hero we need. Now, someone asked me, do we have another Plague Doctor? We do. We also have this available until the end of February, the Unwoke Wiki shirt with the February Plague Doctor design. You can also find that in the store right now, and that goes to fund the Unwoke Wiki project, which I need to do some stuff to update that wiki because a bunch of my stuff, the wiki broke. Well, it didn't break. I screwed something up in the wiki that I need to fix that I've been avoiding fixing, but I am going to fix it. And in the meantime, you can fund the wiki with the cool Unwoke Wiki shirt with the Plague Doctor. This will be around for another week or so, and then we will have a new Plague Doctor, and I already know which design we're using for next month, and it's going to be great. So these are only available for a limited time only in the store, and they say the socialist revolution is real with the Unwoke Wiki stuff on the back. So those are 2 ways you can help support the work I'm doing. Got lots of more stuff in the store as well. How did I create the graphics for the Socialist Dictionary? AI art. AI art. AI art is the best, and I've gotten really good at it. And I think everyone should learn how to use AI art. I think you're dumb if you don't. Anyway, those are my orders of business. We're gonna do the rules when we start the video, but I am taking a point of personal privilege. I'm going to be serious for a second, and I'm going to work out some feelings for a second on the internet. And this has nothing to do with socialism. If you don't want to hear it, come back in about 5 minutes. So I got a message today. Hang on. I got a message today on Twitter that I want to share with you guys. I got a message today on Twitter that said, "Hi, Carlin. I watch most of your stuff on YouTube. I am a silent but big fan. I don't want to be annoying, but I just want to make sure you see my message that Brandon Strzok used your video at CPAC. I am watching it right now, but it happened a few hours ago." Really? Oh, really? Oh, really, Brandon? Now, I wasn't expecting to get this message because, to be quite frank, after supporting Brandon Strzok and flying all over the country for Brandon Strzok every weekend for months and months and months without getting paid really much of anything, and doing fundraising for Brandon Strzok, and being quite literally, when Brandon Strzok couldn't say anything on social media because he was getting charged with his January 6th stuff, being the person that Brandon Strzok would text shit to put out on social media because he couldn't say something, but he always knew that if he texted me, I would say it for him. Being the person who was there from the very beginning, from the point where Brandon Strzok got arrested for January 6th, I was one of the only people that was out there saying from the very effing beginning that it was not Brandon's voice on that recording. I traveled with Brandon for 6 months of my life. I know his voice when I hear it. And the government was charging him with saying stuff that he did not say. And I was the one beating the drum out there every single time, unapologetically, saying he did not do what he's being accused of doing. After all that, Brandon Strzok's best friend spent months smearing me, defaming me, doxing my friends. And Brandon Strzok's best friend is also involved with Walkaway. Brandon Strzok's best friend, whenever he and I would be in an event together, and I'm not even going to say that guy's name because he's a walking piece of human garbage, and I refuse to say his name. But Brandon Strzok's best friend and I were involved in Walkaway at the same time. Brandon Strzok's best friend was jealous that my platform grew when his didn't because he doesn't do anything of value. Brandon Strzok's best friend would show up at fundraising events that we were both at and sulk in the fucking corner the entire time because I was there and he didn't want to be around me. And so he would show up at these things in a cutoff jean short and a fucking flannel, sulking in the goddamn corner the entire time, looking like a sullen teenager because he had to be in the same room as me. And then he doxed my friends. He defamed me to millions of people, and Brandon could have stopped it at any time. At any time. Literally all it would have taken to stop Brandon Strzok's best friend from defaming me and smearing me publicly and doxing my friends over and over and over and over and over and over and over again and calling me a pedophile over and over and over and over and over and over and over again was Brandon needed to pick up the fucking phone and call his best friend and demand he cut the shit. Brandon chose not to do that. Brandon wouldn't even acknowledge me when I was texting him and calling him, begging him to put a stop to it. Brandon did nothing. He wouldn't even acknowledge it. And so I was a little surprised to learn that a year and a half later, or whenever, a year later, I don't even know, I didn't work out exactly the number of months. I was a little surprised today to learn that for some reason, my video is being shown at CPAC promoting Walkaway. Let's see what happened. Let's see what happened. I will show you guys exactly what happened. Here is Brandon speaking at CPAC this morning.
What happened to us in Dallas marked one of the scariest and most eye-opening things I've ever experienced. First, BLM came to our rally and charged our stage. Then afterward, my team and I were chased for 5 blocks by a mob of more than 20 BLM anarchists who threw bottles at us, broke our phones, and screamed and threatened our lives.
We're being chased by a mob of people outside the police station, a mob of Black Lives Matter protesters. They've already thrown shit at us. We're trying to get away from them.
Why the fuck would y'all even come here? You guys is full. What the fuck? Fucking run! Fucking phone down. Give me that phone!
That's Brandon Strzok's best friend, the one in the pink.
You're a minority just like me.
There's me. There's me. Now, I want to point something out in this video. You see me. I'm wearing all black. I'm wearing like leggings and a black t-shirt, and you can see me. I'm walking slowly because I'm carrying my phone like this. Brandon had already run down the fucking street when this happened. I was trying to record this.
You're a minority.
There I am, right there, like carrying my phone, trying to record them.
It's time for fucking conversation. It's time for you to get the fuck out of here. Fucking go. We really own it. Arlen, phone, move. Arlen, phone, move. You want me violent? You want me to show you violence? I will show you violence.
Every major news outlet was there. ABC, CBS, NBC, and others. They all witnessed and filmed what happened. And that night, every news network presented BLM as the...
Here's my point. Brandon Strzok has the fucking nerve to use my fucking video to promote his organization at CPAC. I didn't give Brandon permission to use that video. I haven't spoken to Brandon for years. And so I'm more than a little fucking upset that someone who has allowed his best friend to smear and defame me for years is now using my content that I didn't give him permission to use to promote his organization when Brandon was running ahead of everyone. I'm the fucking person that had a fucking BLM member jump on my back trying to grab my phone to take it from me. Brandon, and by the way, that entire fucking thing was Brandon's fault. It was Brandon's fault because Brandon wanted to create a fucking media spectacle that we even went to the police station that day. It was Brandon's fault that I was told that when we went there, we weren't even going to get out of the goddamn car. But no, then all of a sudden, everyone's jumping out of the car and I had to go too. It is Brandon Strzok's goddamn fault that I got chased by the Black Lives Matter mob in the goddamn first place. And all he cared about was making a big social media fucking stink about it. And then has the gall, after he allowed his best friend to smear and defame me and dox my friends to millions of people, never called me to apologize, never stepped in to stop it. But he's totally fine using the footage that I got at CPAC to promote his organization. Fuck you, Brandon. Fuck you. Honest to God. It's not as though Brandon Strzok doesn't have my phone number. Brandon Strzok could have called me at any time and apologized for the massive fucking amount of bullshit that I have had to endure and that my friends and my loved ones have had to endure because of his goddamn best friend that he could have stopped at any time by picking up the phone and saying, cut the fucking shit. Brandon has never done that. Never, ever done it. So, if you guys would like to let Brandon know that what he's done in terms of using footage that I didn't give him permission to use is not cool. I've put the tweet in the chat. That's the link to this tweet. Here's what you can do to get Brandon's attention. Because if there's one thing that I know about Brandon, it's that he reads every single tweet. He reads every single reply. I don't care if you only have 2 followers on your account. If you retweet that and tag Brandon in it and say, Brandon, what the fuck? Like, this is not cool. Then he will see it. I don't give a flying fuck if it was 2 seconds. I don't give a flying fuck. It makes no difference. It was my recording that I literally got attacked by BLM to get. That I had a BLM fucking bitch jump on my back to try to grab my phone out of my hands to steal it and break it. And it was all Brandon's fault in the fucking first place. He shouldn't have used it. I'm sorry. This is a completely douchebag move on his part. And all he has had to do for years is to pick up the fucking phone and apologize to me. And he refused to do it. Because that would necessitate him admitting that he's not fucking perfect. So, if you guys want to let Brandon know what you think, the very best thing you can do is to retweet this, to put this in Brandon's replies, make sure he's tagged, make sure you use the walkaway hashtag. Go fuck yourself, Brandon. For real. I love that guy like a brother, and I thought he was my friend. And then I had to endure 19 rounds of goddamn hell because he would not step in and tell his walking piece of human garbage best friend to cut the shit. If you guys don't want to do anything with it, it's entirely up to you. But I'm sorry. I did not expect today to find out that my face and my video is being used at fucking CPAC to promote an organization that I do not support. That's all. That's all. And now we can get into our actual orders of business. And before we start the video, I want to put this up because we are going through our rules for Socialism Saturday. Now, if you are new to Socialism Saturday, I promise I don't normally do a rant about Walkaway or Brandon Strauch before. It was a nice coincidence of timing. But now we're refocusing on what we're actually here to do. If you are new here, Socialism Saturday is in existence because socialists use coded language. Socialists use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us. So they may sound like they're speaking English, but they are not speaking English. They are speaking a language called socialist. The goal of Socialism Saturday is to understand the language that they are using. It is not, I repeat, not to debunk them. Our goal here is not to debunk the socialist. There is no value in debunking the socialist. If debunking the socialist is all that was required, then we would already be winning. And we are not winning because everyone just spends all their time debunking the socialist. So I need everyone to refrain from every urge you have to debunk what they're saying. This is about listening to them and understanding them. You don't have to agree with something just because you listen to it. And I promise you, every ounce of energy that you put into debunking it's energy that you could be used just learning to understand them, okay? SB says, I'm here to learn about the socialist agenda against capitalism and the gender binary. Then you are in the right place, SB. If you have questions in the chat, you're welcome to ask them at any time. I will answer all good faith questions that are asked. The chat will also help out. Don't make assumptions that just because you've heard something a conservative influencer has said that they're telling the truth. So I need you, if you're asking a question, like, be open to the information that we're giving you, because that is the purpose of this. However, if you are a longtime viewer and you keep asking the same question over and over and over and over and over again, at some point, I'm going to make the assumption that you're not actually listening to what I'm saying. And there is nothing more aggravating to me than when someone asks me the same question over and over and over and over and over again and doesn't listen to the answers. Because the reason they're asking the same question over and over and over again is because they want me to give them a different answer. I'm not going to give you a different answer. I am the most consistent bitch on this platform. And at some point, you're going to hear about it and you're not going to like the response you get. So listening, asking questions is fine, especially questions from new people are great. But don't throw a hissy fit if I'm not giving you the answer you want, okay? Number 4, normal chat rules apply. Guys, I need you to treat this like a class. You are in a class. I am the teacher of the class. You are the students in the class. If you don't like it here, if you don't like my teaching style, if you don't like my tone, if you don't like my outfit, if you don't like my weight, if you don't like my haircut, even though you can't even see it because it's under a hat, if you don't like anything about me, you can leave. No one's going to stop you. You can go and watch something else. But as long as you are here, you are the student in the class. I am the teacher of the class. Number 1, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the class. I can do whatever I want because you're in my class. Okay? But if I tell you to stop doing something, or if I tell you no, or if I give you an answer you don't like, and you start whining and complaining and saying, you're just fat and ugly, then I'm going to ban you. I don't have kids. Rule number 2 is no whining. I don't have kids. I don't have kids for a reason. And the reason I don't have kids is because I don't want to listen to whining. Just stop doing whatever I tell you to stop doing and we'll be cool. Lastly, you can try to argue with me if you disagree with me, but chances are I have literally watched thousands more hours of this than you have. So if you try to argue with me, you better bring your receipts and you better bring your A game, because if you don't, you're not going to like the outcome. This is about listening. This is about learning. Again, asking questions is far more preferable to arguing with me because you're not getting the answer that you like, okay? Yumi Park is a North Korean defector YouTuber currently living in New York. Please look into having her as a guest. No, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I know who she is. I'm familiar with her. I just don't know that she would bring a lot of value to what I'm doing. And I'm not no shade against her. She seems like a nice lady. I appreciate the suggestion. It's just not something I'm really interested in right this second. Tayton, the only thing I don't like about you is that I'm always right. And it makes me blackpill. Well, I appreciate you, Tayton, admitting that I am, in fact, always right. Thank you. All right. That's all we've got for right now. I guess so. Let's jump in and get started. Guys, please make sure to mount the like button for me, if you would be so kind. I will be drinking, at least to start, a socialist beer with blueberry, passion fruit, and lemon. So if you're drinking something fun, let us know what you're drinking in the chat. Alcohol does make the evening go along a little bit easier. All right, let's see what they have to say. Oh, shit. I didn't set it up right. Of course I didn't. Why would I set it up right? See, I was yelling and now I'm like disheveled from yelling. Where is it? Oh, thank you guys for letting me work out that point of personal privilege, though. I feel like I got it off my chest. I didn't know I had that much pent-up rage about that whole thing. It wasn't until I started yelling that I was like, oh, I really needed to work out some feelings just then, didn't I? Yep. Oh, it's Naruto's birthday? Happy birthday, Naruto! Happy birthday, my friend. I apologize. I didn't see. Happy birthday. We appreciate you. All right. Let's get this party started, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Series of talks with radical thinkers and agitators who are pushing the boundaries of revolutionary queer praxis. And today, we have come together for transnational voices of transgender communist politics in order to share our own insights on how trans liberation can foster communist world-making and what gender variant communities within the proletariat have to win in engaging the struggle to abolish the present state of things. Further, we aim to dialectically grasp the transfeminist debate on the abolition of gender and how it can shape both our bodily autonomy and our political praxis as revolutionaries. This is Ira. I come from Spain, and I consider myself a revolutionary transfeminist and a queer Marxist. It's a pleasure being here, so you can introduce yourselves.
Oh my gosh, nation of bottoms. Internationalism of bottoms. Hi, I'm Kay. My pronouns are she and her. Oh my gosh, I hate pronouns. I am calling from Queens, New York. And I guess because it's relevant, I co-edited a book called We Want It All, an anthology of radical trans poetics. And I am an organizer and a poet and essayist, and some other things.
I mean, it is a
Jules?
pretty blue.
Hi, I'm Jules. I am
Hi,
a Londoner
Jules.
based in Vienna. I am
Hi,
one of
Jules.
the two co-editors, along with Al, of Transgender Marxism, which is out this month. And
It's red.
I suppose, been involved in debates around these related topics for some years now. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with all three of you.
Hi, I'm Elle. I'm a political economist and gender theorist. I'm phoning in from Manchester, UK. I edited the book with Jules that is released tomorrow. Well, we're recording today, but when we're recording's out. I also do trans activism with Queer Care, which is a trans feminist community support, medical support, and protest support organization. And I am also the co-founder of New Socialist magazine, where I do the economics section.
Bless you for just saying I am a political economist. I think it is like so important for Marxists to actually claim that.
Yeah.
Like it's actually really important. And so many of us just shy away from saying like, no, we actually have like really, we have so many things to say about the structure of the world. And we can, so own it.
Yes.
Own nothing else.
Totally, like reclaim political economy.
It's ours.
Yeah, it is. In spite of being degenerates. Okay, so just first of all, why do we say that trans liberation calls for communist revolution?
Starting with the big one.
I don't even think...
I'm gonna leap on this.
I don't even think I realized last time we watched this when they were like, why does trans liberation call for a communist revolution? Okay. If you are one of those people that is confused every single time a queer Marxist says, like, we are not free until Palestinians are free, or queer Marxist for Palestine, what this person just opened with explains to you why they're saying that queer Marxists for Palestine or we're not free until Palestinians are free. That explains why they believe that. Because trans liberation calls for a communist revolution. Trans liberation is about a revolution against capitalism. That's what they mean when they say that. It's not about being queer. It is about being queer, excuse me. It's not about being trans. It's not about being gay. It is only and exclusively about abolishing capitalism. Let's listen to that point again.
In spite of being degenerates. Okay, so just first of all, why do we say that trans liberation calls for communist revolution?
Why?
Starting with the big one. Okay, I'm gonna leap on this first, but then I promise I will take a backseat.
This is exactly right, Liquid Marble. Queers for Palestine means socialists for the Palestinian revolution against capitalism. Because Israel is capitalism. Israel is the bourgeois. Israel are the settler colonists. Colonialism means taking land that was part of the collective and privatizing it under the oppressive force of capitalism. Every single time they talk about how the Palestinians are decolonizing. Decolonizing means taking the land back from the capitalist oppressors and making it part of the collective. removing the oppressive force of capitalism. That's what that means.
I got the chance this morning to reread the introduction to Jules and Elle's really phenomenal
I've only
collection.
read the introduction
I haven't
to
read
their
the rest
book.
of the collection yet. I read some of it, but I've read the introduction a couple of times. I think it's a great essay, and I'll borrow some of its thought and its formulations. And one of the things I think that you guys point out, and it's definitely true, is that the dominant like say liberal bourgeois reframing of trans liberation as trans rights and recognitions, kind of say based in the supposedly successful pattern of like say gay liberation transformed into rights and recognitions realized at the level of the state in some places, not everywhere. This is that we see this happening. And we make the claim that not only is this insufficient, but that pouring our energy into this thing is actually not going to get us what we want or what we need. Why is that? Well, this actually throws us right back into some, like, I think, early 20th century debates about communist feminism or socialist feminism, where and distinguishing what a feminism for the proletariat means against a bourgeois feminism, right?
Bourgeois feminism,
where we understand that what liberation means not just rights and recognitions at the level of the state, but also full access to means of life, equal access to resources, universal housing, universal healthcare, food security.
Holy shit!
Universal.
I already have gotten so much more out of this presentation than we got the first time. So liberation means equal access to resources. What do these people mean when they say equal access to resources? And this person has already started to lay it out. What do they mean when they say equal access to resources? How do they get equal access to resources? That person is speaking about equity. Equity means socialism. Equity means communism. It means collective ownership. No private property. The only way, this person just said, everyone needs universal access to healthcare, universal access to housing, universal access to this and that. We'll listen to the whole list again in a second. But the only way that everyone gets universal access to these things is the abolition of private property. And private property is how they define capitalism. The only way you get that is through socialism and equity. Equity and socialism mean the same thing. Free houses for all means socialism. Equity is how you get equal access to resources. Equity and capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, cannot exist in the same place at the same time. Let's listen again.
What liberation means not just rights and recognitions at the level of the state, but also full access to means of life, equal access to resources, universal housing, universal healthcare, food security.
Food security? Food security means the state will provide your food. That's what that means. They like how these people frame things is they say, we just want people to make sure they have food and healthcare and all this stuff. Well, how do you provide food security for everyone? The state provides the food. What happens when the state is who controls the access to the food? If you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't do what the state wants you to do, you don't eat. This is how they're going to control people. Food security means getting your food from a community kitchen. Exactly. You will become dependent on the state for your food. Let's see. Steve had a question. Do human bodies count as private property or public property? Well, that's interesting, Steve, because we watched a presentation several months ago called The Propertied Regime, and that was from Red May, who is a group of radical revolutionary socialists in Seattle. And they seem to say in that presentation that individual liberties and your body they count as private property. And remember, these people want to abolish all private property. So these people don't want private property to exist, and they consider individual liberties to be a form of private property, and they want to abolish all private property. So what does that mean?
Universal access to education, things like this, right? This kind of economic transformation that would be a kind of communist horizon, right? A world in which everyone has what they need. So why does this immediate
equity is just a world in which everyone has what they need? Do you know how they're teaching elementary school students at the UCLA School of Education about equity? They are teaching them that equity just means that everyone has what they need, third graders. And wouldn't it be great to live in a world where everyone has what they need, third graders? And doesn't that seem fair and just, third graders? Don't you just want everyone to have what they need? Wouldn't that be nice? And if you don't believe me, I literally have the lesson plans written on my Substack. That was taught to a group of third graders over the course of months at the UCLA School of Education. Yeah, exactly. Juice boxes for everyone, bro.
immediately matter to trans people? Well, like, we can't, without pushing this part of the story too far, we also know that trans people are like very poor. This is just like broadly economically true. Very poor, subject to significant employment discrimination, very unemployed or underemployed, and therefore, like the struggle for liberation is a struggle for material security, and so it takes place not just in the realm. Sound a little 1848 about it, not just in the realm of the political question, it's deeply in the realm of the social question. So that's on the one hand. But on the other, I think that we can think about, like when we talk about like trans liberation and communism, there's kind of maybe a different way to phrase that or to understand that, where we think about like, what do trans people offer to an understanding of a communist horizon that, so what do trans people in our particularity have to say or to offer that expands the universalism of a communist society, right? Which is to say, one that would be achieved in time through processes and events that we could call revolutionary, that we would have to call revolutionary because they would require the abolition of society as it currently is, right?
Oh!
And
this person just articulated how the left is winning. Let's go back and listen. Basically, this person just said that the communist revolution is basically a series of processes and events that overturn like the current order. Let's listen again.
Of a communist society, right? Which is to say, one that would be achieved in time through processes and events that we could call revolutionary, that we would have to call revolutionary because they would require the abolition of society as it currently is.
A series of processes and events that we could call revolutionary because it would require the abolition of society as it currently is. How the Marxist revolution is taking place in America is not through the protests in the streets or the fists or the crazy pink-haired people. screaming at each other. It's not through Antifa. Now, those are components of it, though. Don't get me wrong. Those are things that are, but that's not the main way that they're doing it. They're doing it through implementing processes that gradually pushes the country in a certain direction. The 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. They gain power by getting into positions of institutional power, not through politics, not elected positions. They'll do that if they can. But that's not their focus. The radical revolutionary socialist collectives flat out say, we're not engaging in a political process. They don't even bother running candidates most of the time. So they're focused on gaining positions of institutional power. What does that mean? It means getting themselves into positions, jobs that they can't get fired from. Higher education, government jobs, things like that. They use those positions of power to destabilize the system, getting us to point number 2. What does that mean? They implement laws and policies or processes that destabilize or cause problems. Destabilization is meant to be the abolition of society as it currently is. It's meant to destabilize what is normative, destabilizing the things that hold up capitalism. And when they do this, how most people experience this is, wow, things kind of suck in the world. Prices are really high. I feel like if I go on the subway in New York, I'm going to get killed. Like, I can't go down the street without seeing a drug addict sitting on the side of the road. All this crime is suddenly legalized. People are literally shitting in the streets in San Francisco. Like they basically do these things that cause problems to be created all over society, to the point at which normal people wake up and they go, things kind of suck right now. And then when those normal people go, things kind of suck, what the socialists do is they say, you know who's to blame for all those things sucking? You know what's causing all those problems? Capitalism. Capitalism is to blame for everything, because now we're getting into point number 3. They destabilize the system. They cause problems. People start noticing they're causing, people notice the problems. They don't know the source of the problems. And then the source of the problems goes, how about, do you guys know how much capitalism sucks? Capitalism is causing all these problems. Look at all these problems. Capitalism is to blame for all of this. How about we try Marxism? You want to try Marxism? Capitalism isn't working. Capitalism is causing all these problems. How about you try Marxism? That's the long form version of what that person just said. Let's rewind and listen one more time.
To say or to offer that expands the universalism of a communist society, right? Which is to say, one that would be achieved in time through processes and events that we could call revolutionary, that we would have to call revolutionary because they would require the abolition of society as it currently is, right? And this is something that I've argued in print, but I'll just say it out loud because I believe it. One of the things that we give to the movement, maybe we can put it that way, is the insistence on a certain kind of bodily autonomy, an insistence that the aesthetic intervention into bodily autonomy is a political demand, is something that needs that when we demand like society be rearranged in certain ways, this is a part of the project, and it touches on lives that are not just ones that go through medical transition, right? And I don't just mean trans people, I mean like everyone needs a body that feels good to be in, whether that means you've had sufficient rest, or you've had enough to eat, or you are not subject to forms of violence that like rob you or of your limbs, or you don't have breasts and you would like them. Like I think that we can sort of, these are all dimensions. These are all related to like the kind of being a body, like a subject in the world, who is able to go through the world in a flourishing way. And I think that this is like, so this kind of like, and what I refer to in print in an essay as the intensification of control over one's life, as opposed to a kind of intensive regime. I think that is something that we offer to the horizon of communism, and that involves both trans people and also non-trans people.
Wow. Well, thanks, Kay, for like covering all our upcoming questions. It's always great hearing you. Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I would like add some contribution that I think it's great from transgender Marxism is that of situating trans liberation and oppression along the lines of social reproduction. And also, I remember.
What was that? What was that? What was that thing that James Lindsay refuses to cover and blocked Tayton for bringing up in his feed? What did that person just say? Did anyone catch it? What was that term? Social reproduction. Pop quiz in the chat. What does social reproduction mean? James Lindsay refuses to teach this to his audience, blocks people who come in his feed asking about it. What does social reproduction mean? Let's show people we are smarter than James Lindsay's audience. What does social reproduction mean? And why is it important? Social reproduction reproduces capitalism. Why? Why does social reproduction reproduce capitalism? Come on, you guys know this. I know you know this. The nuclear family reproduces the capitalist system. This is the basis of every attack on parental rights in the country today. The nuclear family social reproduction theory says that social systems will reproduce themselves unless they're disrupted. In this case, these people believe that the nuclear family upholds capitalism through social reproduction. Social reproduction upholds the gender binary in the nuclear family. The family unit and the gender binary reproduce capitalism. The nuclear family reproduces capitalism. The nuclear family are the means of production. This is really important, guys. Because when people start, when people, I hear this all the time. They're confused, like, Carlin, socialism just means that they want to control the means of production. It just means they want to control the factories. No, it's not what it means. Maybe it did at one time. But we don't live in a world right now in which controlling the factories controls the means of production. Do you guys understand that? Like, that's not the means of production that these people, that the queer Marxists are trying to control, are not the factories. It's the family. It's the people. The family is the means of production of capitalism. In order for them to get their Marxist utopia, they need to destroy the means of production of capitalism that is the nuclear family, and this all comes from an idea called social reproduction theory. The children are the products they produce. The children are the future generation of proletarian workers, and unless they are produced outside of the nuclear family, they will inevitably reproduce capitalism. This is the production of the ideology. This is the means of production that they care about. Say it another way, Milo. You are the means of production that they want to own.
Great from transgender Marxism is that of situating trans liberation and oppression among the lines of social reproduction. And also, I remember when Chris Chidi said that of sexuality and gender are only problematic when there is a division between the reproductions of the means of production and biological reproduction. And I think that it is also necessary to confront some like queer radical thesis that presupposes queer and trans embodiments as revolutionary for, like, there is indeed a place for queer and trans people in capitalism. It's only that it's a violent and devaluated place.
This is so great. This is so great. Let's listen again.
This is that presupposes queer and trans embodiments as...
Hang on, we'll go back to that in a second. SB, you're trying to own the libs, bro. Stop trying to debunk them. I mean, you can keep doing this if you want, but what you're trying to do right now is own the libs. And that's not going to work. And I'm going to explain how that's not going to work. Doesn't wanting to own us violate the idea of not owning property? No, bro. No. Because they don't want to own us. They want everyone to be a part of the collective. Everything is collectivized. Everything belongs to everyone else. What you're revealing here is that you don't yet understand what they mean by private property. By private property, they mean your home, they mean your land, they mean any rental units you might have, they mean your children, your parental rights, because they believe that children should not be the private property of their parents. Children should belong to the collective, and they mean your individual liberties. That's what they mean. You have to put aside your ideas of what definitions they're using and listen to the definitions that they're using. They don't mean owning you like private property. They mean that everyone belongs to everyone else. Everyone is obligated to everyone else. They are talking about the Borg.
It's also necessary to confront some like queer radical thesis that presupposes queer and trans embodiments as revolutionary for, like, there is indeed a place.
So what this person is saying is that they're supposing that queer and trans embodiments are revolutionary. Revolutionary means socialist. And that the only existence that trans and queer people have under capitalism is a violent one. Because trans and queer people are not free under capitalism, according to these people.
For queer and trans people in capitalism, it's only that it's a violent and devaluated place. It's like the Industrial Reserve Army, or just a global chain of care work, or even just being surplus population and just letting ourselves die. So what I think it's key about...
No, this is not what they're talking about. Again, I need you to unlearn everything that every conservative influencer has ever taught you. They are not talking about indoctrination. They are talking about there are no private property rights. You are not a private person. No one is a private person. That's not indoctrination, bro. That's not just a head game. Everyone belongs to everyone else. You are obligated to everyone else.
About the necessity for a communist revolution is that in capitalism,
this is a better way to look at it.
Family reproduces femininity and masculinity so as to keep...
This person is about to explain that capitalism produces the gender binary. Capitalism produces femininity and masculinity. That is what the gender binary is. Listen.
This revolution is that in capitalism, family reproduces femininity and masculinity so as to keep producing surplus and maintaining capitalist order. And as long as it happens, bourgeoisie has been unable or just has not been under interest to abolish such institutions that contribute to our harm and oppression. So I consider that it has to be the next revolution of the world, the one to abolish them. And because of, as it happened with social reproduction theory and the emancipation of women, taking part in social production is a key part is because social production is like the last chain of capitalist world, and they are those institutions.
Social production is the last chain of the capitalist world. Fuck James Lindsay right in the ass. Well, I'll tell you what. Fuck James Lindsay. Like that's all that's going through my social reproduction is the last chain of the capitalist world, and James Lindsay refuses to talk about this. What that means is that the family, the nuclear family, is the last line of defense against the socialist revolution. The attacks on parental rights are getting so severe because these people understand that the nuclear family, because of social reproduction theory, is the last line of defense against the socialist revolution. That is an excellent question for James Lindsay, Touge. Another excellent question for James Lindsay is, why is James Lindsay blocking people who are asking him why he's not covering this on Twitter? Because not only is James Lindsay not covering this, not only is James Lindsay lying to his audience about the fact that he's not covering this, and he's saying, pinky swear, trust me, bro, I'm totally doing it, when he's not doing it and never has. He's also blocking people on Twitter who ask him why he's not covering this. Listen again. I'll do it, James. I'll do it. I'll do it. Don't worry, I got it. Don't worry.
Taking part in social production is a key part is because social production is like the last chain of capitalist world. And they are those institutions, and mainly capitalist family, that are just not allowing us to partake in social reproduction and in production, that I think it becomes just like inseparable, the revolution of the producers with the emancipation of those who are oppressed by those institutions. So now I'm gonna give like my turn to Jules.
Thanks. I suppose there's kind of two points leading out of this, and one is sort of the direct answer to the question, like why we think revolution is necessary, or why one is required for us to emancipate ourselves, which is kind of the easy question. And then the kind of one that's tied into it is how useful either of our collections or any collections of writings could possibly be in kind of achieving that pretty lofty and pretty challenging set of aims. So my answer is very similar to what Kay had to say, which is that there is a need not only for any old revolution, but also a social revolution. So like a revolutionary change that doesn't just get rid of the existing political, institutional, juridical, any order on that level. It kind of wouldn't suffice to sort of achieve that, which is, I think, that would already be ambitious enough, but we need something which extends, we need something which extends beyond that and actually transforms the relations which we live on a sort of everyday and sort of ongoing basis, like the world full of landlords and prisons and employment and taxation and so on. All of this is something which we're going to have to do away with to achieve trans emancipation, or at least that's how it seems that I think that probably the contributors to both of our collections. And the reason we've come to that conclusion, I'm sure, like there's always a balance you've got to strike. Like the reason we've come to that conclusion is at once because trans people are overwhelmingly proletarian. Like you have your minority within the minority groups, like trans in tech, or people who've ingratiated themselves in professional organizations. Like those people exist for sure. I've even met one trans business owner at one point. That was quite exciting.
Well,
she had a pretty predictable world.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. The very best way for me to get in front of James Lindsay's audience is to use James Lindsay's name. So I can now make a clip of this, which I can put on YouTube, putting James Lindsay's name in the title, saying all of the things that James Lindsay isn't telling you about the destruction of the nuclear family. And that's the very best way to get in front of James Lindsay's audience, because then that clip will be served up to James Lindsay's fanboys. And most of them will watch it and they'll go, you don't know what you're talking about. Fuck you. You're fat and ugly. Like, most of them will do that because they're retards. But some of them will listen to it and be like, oh shit, what else isn't James telling us? That's just the reality of the situation, man.
Which I didn't really get along with, but for the most part, like trans people are proletarians, right? And this is the basis for our revolutionary outlook first and foremost. But on the other hand, we can't pretend that just like while these this exploited class of people is the same as any other exploited person, because this sort of like, I think that's a kind of attempt to like short circuit the question, you know what I mean? Like clearly transgender people have specific and particular struggles which we face down. Like we come into conflict with families, with police, with border patrol agents, with any other number of any other number.
So look at what she just said. Transgender people have specific and particular struggles which we face down with police, with border. I think she said with families too. Let me just listen to this real quick.
Like clearly transgender people have specific and particular struggles which we face down. Like we come into conflict with families.
We come into conflict with families. Do you guys think it's a coincidence that in the GSA clubs in schools, they teach the kids, you can't trust your family. Don't tell your family you're in this club. Don't tell your family what we're doing here. Because if you tell your family what we're doing here, they're going to kick you out of the house and your family will become unsafe. Don't tell your family that you're trans at school because they're going to kick you out because your home is unsafe for you. The reason they're doing that is because these are the people, the useful idiots that follow these people are the ones running the GSA clubs in schools. And so they're telling the kids, your family's not safe. You don't have a safe space. You have to hide the fact that you're trans. You have to hide the fact that you're non-binary. Come into school and we will use different names and pronouns at school, and we don't have to tell your parents. They're doing that to destabilize the family unit because, as we've already learned, the family unit is the last remaining step against like holding these people off from the Marxist revolution, because these people believe that the family unit upholds capitalism. Yeah, we're the safe space. We're the safe space. We're the safe space. Your family's not safe. Exactly.
With police, with border patrol agents, with any other number of kind of like substantiating agents of property relations as they exist today. We come into conflict with those constantly in quite interesting and quite specific ways, which I think, I think either one of our collections would sort of show to you. So this is sort of like the first thing. So we believe in social revolution based on our belief in social domination, and like, social domination as in capital operates in a way that sort of like, you don't have to be a committed, like ideological pro-capitalist person to participate in the capitalist system. It's sort of, there's an indifferent face which you sort of participate in just by being someone who's paying your rent and showing up to your workplace, or not showing up to your workplace, showing up to your job center, or whatever else. Yeah, so that's the kind of like, that's the basic perspective we believe in. But probably like the more difficult question embedded in this is like what what hope we can kind of have writing theory or writing poetry or doing any other kind of like political or cultural activity instead of bringing around a revolution. And this is, I think, the question which people sort of shy away from a bit more. But I'm actually really fond, I suppose, to sort of like make this symmetrical. Also, this thing from your introduction, which I was also reading this morning, big surprise. Yeah, you have this line in it where you're like, the two of you are like, we believe that poetry can do things that theory can't, that poetry leaps into what theory tends towards. Yeah, and I'm not being modest here. I think like as someone who just edited a theory collection, I think that's very true. I think it's very true, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to think about what you can achieve with the kind of forms get displayed in your collection. But also it's sort of like, what's striking to me is that once like, yeah, there is this kind of limit of theory.
So if they were affirmed and felt safe around capitalism and the nuclear families, would that diffuse their attack? No. No. Why would this not diffuse their attack? Pop quiz. I don't want to speak in front of Parliament. I don't want that gig. He can do it. I don't want that. Sorry. Why were they affirmed and felt safe around capitalism and the nuclear families? Why would this not diffuse their attack? This would not diffuse their attack because the target is capitalism. They don't care about this stuff. This is not about, oh, they don't feel unsafe. What they mean when they say feel safe, listen, when they say feel safe, what they mean is in a world built on equity. There is no universe in which these people will ever feel safe in a world built on capitalism. Again, guys, this is not about being trans. This is not about being queer. Every time people make this about being trans or queer or try to treat these people as though they're good faith actors, you will lose. The only thing, and this is what, again, one of the things James Lindsay is not fucking telling his audience. The only thing that these people care about is abolishing capitalism defined as private property ownership. Every single argument that they make will always come back to the only solution we have is to abolish capitalism. If we just abolish capitalism, that would change everything. And nothing outside of that is going to do. That is literally all they care about. It's not about white people. It's not about Christianity. It's not about men. It's not about any other of those lies that conservative influencers like to tell their audience. It's not about Western civilization. It's not about that at all. Those are conservative talking points. It's not real. What is real is they want to abolish capitalism at all costs. They will say anything that they need to in order to abolish capitalism. They will never feel safe in a society in which private property ownership exists. Capitalism creates all oppressions.
Which I think I agree is that like it's in some sense like revolutionary poetry is more like intuitively possible, you know what I mean? Or poetry which seems to lead us closer towards that kind of a place. I think that's correct. But on the other hand, I feel like in the rest of the conclusion, when you talk about what you're trying to achieve, it seems
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems very much like we're trying to do the same thing.
Exactly.
And this is
It's not your whiteness or your masculinity they want to get rid of, it's your capitalism. Because both whiteness and capitalism whiteness and masculinity are seen to uphold capitalism. Oh, I'm going to let the chat answer this one because, Steve, we've answered this one before. We've answered this one 7 or 8 times in the past couple weeks. Why don't they just move to Cuba? Chat, go ahead. Answer. Now, Steve, maybe you haven't been here. Maybe you've missed a couple episodes of Socialism Saturday. That's fine. Why are they never going to move to Cuba or Venezuela or any other socialist country? Why will that never happen? Because they don't want socialism there. They want it here. They want communism here. They're struggling for liberation here. They want to have socialism in the United States because moving to Cuba wouldn't destroy capitalism. They want socialism here. They want socialism in America. And then if they do it in America, they can do it anywhere. Exactly, Liz. They want socialism in a developed nation. They believe that real socialism hasn't been tried because it hasn't been tried in a developed nation. America is their top priority. They want it here. If they can do socialism in the United States, they can do it anywhere because they love where they live. Well, no, I wouldn't say they love where they live, Nick. I wouldn't say that, but they do want to bring socialism here, but I would not say they love where they live. They don't. If they can do it here, they can do it anywhere. Cuba is a third world country. They want it here. They don't believe that real socialism can be developed if it starts in a third world country. Cuba is already socialist, not capitalist, well, such as it is, because the United States is the bastion of capitalism. If socialism is successful here, it is successful elsewhere. That's why they're not moving to Cuba, bro. Many other correct answers in the chat. Good job to everyone who got it.
Maybe Elle can say more about this, but this notion of like collating and sort of collaging these different styles and different approaches people have taken. I think like reading our 2 collections side to side, as I've been trying to do this week in all my spare time, is it's very striking to me how this this is the same kind of thing. There are all of these different styles and modes and forms which like trans revolutionaries have adopted to try and get towards this sort of transformative endpoint.
Transformative.
But there's this kind of need to collect it all, you know what I mean? Because the alternative is there's this.
Did Marx or Engels include trans people in their writing back in the day? I don't know, and to be quite honest, I don't actually really care. How does socialism connect those trans people discussing this? Do trans people exist? None of that matters. Literally none of that matters. And I say this with all due respect, but like you're watching a presentation with 2 radical revolutionary socialists who literally wrote the book called Transgender Marxism. Listen, guys, the difference between me and every other person covering this topic is, to be quite frank, and I don't mean any offense to you, Mike, I really don't. I don't give a flying fuck what Marx and Engels wrote 150 years ago. What Marx and Engels wrote 150 years ago may have provided like some baseline, and that's fine. But what I care about, and all that I care about, is what is going on in the real world today. And in the real world today, you have Jules Gleason and Elle O'Rourke writing a book and doing a book. They've talked about this book all over the country. This book has sold a lot of effing copies, called Transgender Marxism. And so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what Marx and Engels wrote. It makes no difference at all to what is going on right now. These people are invited speakers at colleges all over the fucking country. So if Marx and Engels wrote something that seems to contradict what they're doing today, no one today seems to care about that. So I don't care. I don't care. The USA causes imperialism. I'll take your word for that, Tayton. And Marx did write about eliminating the nuclear family. Like eliminating the nuclear family is in the Communist Manifesto. But this is why, guys, like, this is why, like, this is why it is a waste of time to focus on philosophy papers that were written 100 years ago and believe that that has any relevance to what is going on in the world today. Sometimes it might overlap, but a lot of the times it doesn't. So if all you're going by is based on what Marx and Engels said 150 years ago, well, Marx and Engels didn't account for Jules Gleason and Ella O'Rourke writing a book about transgender Marxism in the real world today. That's what I care about. In the real world today, not 150 years ago. And nothing that Marx and Engels wrote 150 years ago is going to contradict the fact that Jules Gleason and Ella O'Rourke wrote a book called Transgender Marxism today and have done nationwide book tours about this book and have spoken about this book at all these conferences and have sold thousands of copies of this fucking book. Nothing Marx and Engels did contradicts that because they were 150 years ago. This is happening today.
Tendency to sort of especially rely on mediums which are prone to self-disintegration or to like or especially
again, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. In terms of trying to understand who is pushing these crazy ideas, what crazy ideas are they pushing, what does their language mean, what is coming next, it doesn't fucking matter if Marx and Engels provided the inspiration for it. It doesn't matter. Because this is what is going on right now. The academics have fucked all this up. The academics who are tackling this topic have fucked all of this up and have created, and again, I'm not saying about this you personally, this is not personal towards you, but like the people talking about this from an academic angle have literally fucked their audience in the head to think that the only thing that matters is the philosophical inspiration for this 150 years ago. The philosophical inspiration of this does not make a difference when we can look at what is going on in the real world today. No, wrong, Steve. Oh my fucking God. It's going to be one of those nights, is it? Stevie, these people are entirely rational. They are completely consistent. They are insatiable about their ideas. You are a conservative who likes to say that everyone who doesn't agree with you is mentally ill. No, these people are completely rational when you understand their values and you understand what they believe. So telling people the only reason these people believe this is because they're just irrational and they're probably mentally ill is not fucking productive, bro. Not productive in the least little bit. Yes, we are slowly heading into the land of retardia again, conservatives. Slowly descending into the land of retardia. I should have known. Marx never wrote about glitter families. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's just like, God damn it. I don't know why this is so hard to understand. We are on our way there. Next stop. No, you're not, bro. You're not. No. Wrong. You're not. What you're trying to do is own the libs. You're trying to do the typical bullshit conservative thing to own the libs to make yourself feel morally and intellectually superior. That's what you're doing. Don't fucking front. All right, we're moving on now.
Especially to like restriction to these kind of mediums that have this kind of intimacy and privacy that like across time produces this kind of I was going to say this occult feature, but I'm not actually opposed to the occult, but perhaps you see what I mean. Like there's a difference between a revolutionary like insurgent movement that's like sweeping everything before it and like esoteric retreats and hiding in the woods, you know what I mean? And I do think we need both of those things, but maybe that's something to discuss.
Can someone please make a version of this song except you say retardia instead of disturbia? That'd be pretty great.
Do you mind if I respond super quick?
Yeah, you can.
I love that way of framing it And I'm also curious, you know, Elle, what you have to say about this. But you know, this question of like okay, well, so what does a collection of writing do if we go like this is our horizon of this work? It's not a distant horizon, actually. For some things, it needs to be quite proximate or quite near. How does putting all this writing that's being assembled in different places, this just kind of disparate writing together, what do we think that does? And I think that there is this, I agree that there's this shared project of going like, okay, the internet is not a great way, as much as the internet fosters all kinds of trans culture. And I don't know about you guys, but I had a live journal phase and I had a Tumblr phase. You know, there's there's internet denizenry that goes deep here. But it's not actually very good for producing memory or even community in any deep sense or consciousness. And so, you know, when we are like doing the thing where we're like, okay, we are going to go through a publisher who's sympathetic and can be supportive in certain ways and is limited in other ways, but we're going to go through a publisher and we're going to take all these people who are doing sometimes quite out there projects. Actually, that's a really good thing, and put them together. We are helping to concentrate all of these forms of thought in a certain place, so they have a certain kind of durability, and we are, you know, to a certain extent, we are calling something. I'm going to justify this in a second, but to a certain extent, we're calling something into being. I know that, and one of the things that you guys say is that you're not like trans Marxism is already out there. You're not making it happen. But I think that there are going to be people who, so that's definitely true for you. We know it, we see it, we are in these conversations. But, and this is something that I actually kind of speculated about online like a while ago. You know, like there are people out there who and in sometimes many cases who aren't recognizing this thing, and who are like not alive to these formations as they already exist, who aren't reading it, whether that's like cis Marxists or trans people who are maybe, or trans people who are like, I am new to Marxism, I wonder what this has to say to my life, I'm new to
the authors of Transgender Marxism, or the editors, because Transgender Marxism is actually just a book of essays, are Jules Gleason and L. O'Rourke, the top left and the bottom left. To the point of the revolution made earlier by this person, book publishers are a big form of that. Yeah, they own a lot of book publishers. Well, we've watched this presentation before, Gloria. We're watching it for a second time. So that's the only other time we've seen the person in the top right, I think. I feel like we've seen the person in the bottom right again, though, but I can't place them. But I feel like we've watched something with the we watched Jules Gleason and L. O'Rourke actually quite a bit.
Communism. I wonder how this can change my life, and change my ways of being with people in the world. Or it's, you know, and this is a kind of a vanishingly small population, but it's important to address. Let's say post-structuralist and trans studies who are stuck in a kind of what I would think of as a residual, but in some places still quite powerful mode of thinking that Marxism is not capable of understanding sexual and gender particularity, right? And so there are all of these constituencies that I think like writing the collection actually creates. And so similarly with you know, with We Want It All, and I will hold this up for the reader or the viewer of this video, whoever you are. So with We Want It All, what
do I think socialism is inevitable in the USA at this point? Yep, I do. Considering the infiltration of so many of our institutions, especially those that teach our children and HR at big companies, I believe that we will be in a Marxist utopia by 2050, 2050 at the absolute latest. It's not going to be 2030. This is not a 2030 plan. That is a completely different fucking thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. But the reason it's inevitable is not necessarily because they own all of the institutions. And it's not because of the HR departments. HR departments are actually relatively easy to overcome. The reason that it's inevitable is because no one, and I mean pretty much no one, actually takes this problem seriously and is doing anything cohesively to fight back against it. The right spends more time fighting each other. Listen, like, I put out a socialist dictionary today on my Substack. One of my community members tweeted the socialist dictionary and tagged Moms for Liberty. You would think the socialist dictionary might be something that, I don't know, Moms for Liberty might find kind of useful, but instead of finding it useful, Moms for Liberty blocked them. They blocked a person for tweeting out a socialist dictionary. James Lindsay blocks people for talking about social reproduction theory. Like, these are not serious people. It's not a serious effort. There is no one that is actually taking this problem seriously in any cohesive way. When I go to socialist events and I send stuff to Glenn Beck's team or just the Blaze in general or any of these other outlets, they never cover it. Never. And then they go on their air and they act confused about what the problem is. And I'm like, bro, I literally sent this to you months ago. But they won't cover it. So people don't know. And it's like, is this a fixable problem? I mean, even if everyone understood what was going on, it would still be a difficult problem to solve. Yeah, Glenn Beck could do a whole fucking I could set Glenn Beck up with a chalkboard on this. I could give him everything he needs to do it. I'm not even joking about that. Will he do it? No. And so it's like if people are not serious about, these people are winning because they're serious about fighting back. They're serious about pushing their agenda. These people get up every single day and push their agenda, a battle of inches, like over and over and over again, every single day for decades, centuries. These are not the same organizations. Stop. The fact that conservatives don't know that this is not a UNESCO thing, that this is not a WEF thing, that this is not any of those is part of the goddamn problem. I get people in my chat every week. This is a WEF conspiracy. No, it's not. Nope. Two completely different things. And that's because conservative influencers have not taken this problem seriously. They have not taken time to understand what's going on. And so we are all inevitably and completely effed. I have 162 people watching this right now on YouTube and Twitter. I have another 30 watching over on... I have 200 people watching right now. I can't do anything, like, no offense, and I appreciate all the people who are here. I really, really do. Thank you for dropping by. I hope you stick around. But I can't do anything of any significance with 200 people. The fact of the matter is that with people with larger platforms are just shilling their own goddamn political narrative. They don't listen. They don't want to know. They refuse to cover it. And so here we are. So no, we're effed. We're completely effed. And we're probably all going to see the socialist utopia in our lifetime, unless you're like 80 or so. Fun times.
Andrea, my co-editor Andrea Abby Karam and I were trying to do, in some sense has to do with, yes, all of these people are actually doing this thing, but...
Hang on, Tayton just sent in a super chat. Oh, got a couple super chats. Conservatives mix up the WEF and the radicals just like they mix up liberals, progressives, and socialists. That's exactly right. That's it. And here's the thing too, is they're so righteous when they do it. And every time I try to tell them, like, those are not the same groups, those are not the same, they go, you just don't know, Carlin. You need to keep going, Carlin. You don't understand what's actually going on. Oh, silly you. You think you want, like, it's like they get so self-righteous, and I'm like, bro, you deserve to lose. Like, good luck. Good luck, seriously. Yeah, the right thinks the socialists are joking via liberal arts and playing fun games for shits and giggles. The right is not serious. That's exactly it. They don't take this problem seriously. They don't understand the problem. They're all convinced they do, but they really, really don't. So it's like, you can't help people who don't want to win. Would it take the DSA getting more elected officials into local or national? No, it wouldn't, Mike. And I'll tell you why. Because the real socialists are not the Democratic Socialists of America. The real socialists don't even allow their members to join the Democratic Socialists of America. So no, these are not, bro, this is not the DSA. These people are way farther left than the DSA. None of these people are members of the DSA. When I say we watch real radical revolutionary socialists, I do not mean the DSA. These people think the DSA are capitalists. So no, DSA doesn't mean shit in this equation.
We are making it possible in some ways for people to see the category, people who did not see the category before. So there's something to do with the energy of convoking that makes something perceptible and conceivable.
Let's all explain to Mike why these people don't need political power to win and why political power is actually the weakest form of power you can have. Go. I don't want to explain this. I've explained this a million times before. Let's all explain to Mike why it makes no difference whether or not these people have political power, because political power is not how they're winning. Because they have institutional power. Institutional power and political power are not the same thing. Institutional power means they own every major institution, and they don't need to have political power because they have government jobs. They also own the schools. Institutional power is power they can't be voted out of. They will be in power regardless of who wins the next election. Republicans could win every single seat in the next election. They won't. That's not going to happen, but let's just live in the land of fantasy for a second. If Republicans win the House, the Senate, and the presidency in November, the socialists would still be fucking in charge because they don't get their power from from political power. They get their power from institutional power, and it makes no difference who controls Congress or who controls the White House when you have institutional power. They own the institutions. The Long March through the institutions started 70 years ago, and it worked. They do the work. They have academia and they have publishing. They're not just infiltrating through the schools. They own the schools. They own your kids. They own your kids. They can literally take your kids away from you if you don't transition their gender, guys. They own your kids. Political power, it changes all the time. The institutions stay. They have institutional power. They own the schools. They do not care about elections. They take over by getting into positions of power in institutions and putting their own kind in power in places at universities and taking them over. They already have institutional power. Institutional power. Politics are fleeting. Institutions are forever. They can't get fired from their jobs. They also can't get voted out of their jobs. Institutional power, they control education. Do you guys understand? If Democrats are socialists, then why are socialists saying not to vote for Joe Biden? Bro, do you guys realize that these people complain more about the Democrats than they complain about the conservatives? These people hate the Democrats more than you do, bro. These people don't even see conservatives as like a blip on their radar. They complain about the Democrats far more. Lots of correct answers in the chat. Hopefully people are listening tonight. Yep. Thank you, Mike, for asking good questions. We appreciate it. Listen, Mike, if you're relatively new to this, I don't mean to come down harshly on you. I really, really don't. I get fired up when I do these types of streams. You're asking good questions, and this is a lot. It's a lot for everyone to wrap their head around. And believe me, most people in the chat have been there before. Many people in the chat understand exactly what you're feeling right now, because when they first started watching it, they were in exactly the same place. So you're good, dude. You're exactly where you should be. You're going to go through a mourning process where you realize exactly how fucked up all things are. And we will be here to support you. We got you, bro. We got you. It's going to be, well, it's not going to be okay. We're all irrevocably F, but we can support each other through the inevitable Marxist revolution. It literally does answer the question if you have an IQ of over 100. Do you have an IQ of over 100? Because you really can't understand my content if you don't have an IQ of over 100. It literally does answer the question, bro. Literally does.
For people who hadn't been able to perceive it or conceive it before, and I think that work is important. And I guess the final thing that I'll say is I think it's important for this project that, you know.
To be fair, I only call people retarded when they're acting retarded. If you don't act retarded, you won't be called retarded. No, Nate, that's actually not what I said. That's actually not what I said. What I said, and I'll speak slower because I think you might not be smart enough to be here, Nate. So I'll speak slower and I'll use a soft tone of voice. The people that we are watching right now hate the Democrats. They consider the Democrats to be neoliberals. Do you understand that, Nate? Neoliberals. They call them neoliberals because they believe that Democrats are too close to capitalism. They call progressives neoliberals because progressives are too close to capitalism. They call democratic socialists neoliberals because they believe they're too close to capitalism. These people are not voting in elections. And if they do, they are certainly not voting for Democrats who they actively campaign against. If you think that these people are Democrats, that's because you've been listening to retarded conservative influencers who don't know what they're talking about, who have lied to you for money. And you've probably paid them money, Nate, in order to lie to you. And so they'll smile and they'll tell you whatever lie you want to hear to make yourself feel better about your state in the world. But reality is that these people are very, very clear, Nate, that they hate the Democrats. They hate the Democrats. They are not Democrats. Do I need to say this again? Do you understand, or do we need to talk even slower?
To the extent that, like, I think we only engage in these forms of cultural production, theory or poetry, because we think that it can shape consciousness in certain ways, not in an instrumentalizing way, right? But like, we wouldn't do it if we didn't think it could shape consciousness in certain ways. And to that extent, maybe we already disagree with some Marxists who don't think that consciousness is an important category. And so I think that is, like that it provides some of the impetus for writing.
I just want to say I did do LiveJournal, but I never did, Yeah, I never did MySpace, and I just went straight from LiveJournal to Facebook. That's my internet trajectory. Just as full disclosure.
I didn't either, but Facebook, yeah. Actually, I think what Kay said is like really important to understand both transgender Marxism, We Want It All, or even the book I'm working on. It's like taking it off the ground. And I remember when I was like 15, 16 years old, I was already in the Communist Party. And I was starting my transition.
I was 15 or 16 years old, and I was already in the Communist Party and was just starting my transition. Okay.
And it's like, I literally needed some specific work that could explain myself, not in terms of liberalism, but in terms of Marxism. I really felt guilty for not being able to find the words to just justify that my existence was not part of bourgeoisie or neoliberalism. It was then when I just found like trans liberation, a movement whose time has come, but it's like, okay, it's so 90s, 290s. And I really hope that it can work somehow to all those gender variant Marxists to be just to find words to explain themselves and their oppression, just like linking it to our next issue, which is that of gender.
I still have stuff to say about collections.
Oh, I love, and I love to say about poetry and utopia, and I have it for afterwards.
So yeah, I just wanted to bounce off what Kay was saying. So like when it comes to transgender writing, there is often very little new under the sun. There's a really good poem in Kay's collection, the first trans poem. Every trans person is blah 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 blah. Every time you're transed out is blah 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 blah. And it's kind of like, yes, everyone says this all the time. There's little new under the sun.
All right, Nate is definitely not smart enough to be here, bro, because Nate seems to think that I still haven't answered his question when I've already answered it 3 or 4 times already. So maybe other people in the chat can try to answer Nate's question, even though it's already been answered 3 or 4 times. But maybe you guys can try to answer and he'll listen to you because he's not listening to me. And if he doesn't listen to other people, we'll just block him because he's not smart enough to be here. Sorry, Nate. Facts are facts. We've tried. We've spent time. It's been explained to you. It was explained to you really slowly, and you are still whining.
It has been done before. I mean, transgender Marxism is not particularly, we're not trying to plant a flag and say we're claiming some sort of new or radical novelty here. We kind of stand in a long lineage of gender radicals and subversives who've read Marx, who've interpreted him, who've used them to understand their own conditions over the past 200 years.
Are you fucking serious, bro? Are you fucking serious? All right. To the question about why are these people inevitably winning, it's because when conservatives come and they get involved in this, not only do they not listen to a word that's said, not only do they ignore every single thing that's happening on the screen right now, they also come into the chat and they try to derail everything by asking a question that is not actually remotely related to what is being discussed. If you want to know why conservatives lose, it's because of this right here. This. So, Nate, I'm very sorry, bro. You're not smart enough to be here. Goodbye. We're not going to do it anymore.
So Marx has been read by all people of all social positions, and that includes trans people. But there are a couple of distinct things, and I think they're interesting what's going on with both our collection and what Kay wrote and her book and their book.
If socialists made the slow, steady climb through institutions, would they do the same politically? They don't have to. And I appreciate that you're asking a good faith question. So I'm not going to treat you like I treat the moron that we just removed from the chat. If they own the institutions, the politics don't matter. Institutional power is far greater and far more long-lasting than political power. If you own the institutions, it literally does not matter who gets elected to what. So no, they don't have to do the same politically. They will at some point. At some point, they will abolish the Electoral College, and then that's it. That's the ball game. That's why they're trying very hard to abolish the Electoral College. Because once they abolish the Electoral College, it's over, man. It's over. The Electoral College is the only thing. They're also, by the way, going to abolish the Senate. They're also going to abolish the Supreme Court. They are going to abolish all unelected positions that are not that aren't conducive to them. But they're not going after politics because they don't need to. That's like you're asking them to. It's like you're basically what you're asking, bro, is like someone got into the NBA. They worked their way up through the ranks. They got into the NBA. They're playing for an NBA team, and then you come in and ask, but why aren't you working your way up through the ranks to play college basketball? Well, why would they need to work there? Why would they need to? It's like if someone goes out of high school and goes right into the NBA, and then you come in and ask them like, why aren't you trying to play college basketball? You got into the NBA. Playing college basketball should be easy. You got into the NBA because they don't need to. Like what they have is already far better than what college basketball is. They're making more money than they would in college basketball. They have more power, they have more fame than they ever would in college basketball. So why on earth would they go back and try to do college basketball because they're in the NBA? It's the same thing.
Well, the Kay and Andrea's book, sorry, it's two people. So you do have the revival of Marx after the financial crisis, and this is something that everyone says, and it's really boring, and because they just want to say stuff like, oh, inequality is bad, or blah, blah, blah. But you do have the revival of Marx, and you do have a stronger issue in gender and sexuality. So you have the dusting off of social reproduction theory, but also you have a weird transformation of queer studies where, queer people, queer theorists suddenly discover Marx after ignoring him for a few decades. And you also have transgender studies, which kind of formalizes itself and institutionalizes itself just over the past 2 decades. But I think by far the most important here is kind of the rise of an increasingly assertive transgender politics. So from people who've carved out a space in wider society that they weren't really able to do before, and done things that would have been unimaginable just a few short decades ago. So cultural change has been fairly swift. Conservative reaction has been really intense. And there's always a certain pessimism about these developments. So it argues that the recent acceptance of LGBT people is like this already recuperated phenomena, that it's limited to discourse and representation, that it serves an overwhelmingly upper class constituency, that they've defanged and domesticated what was previously a vibrant and contentious radical sexual politics. And there's a certain amount of truth to this. I'm not saying there isn't. But I also think that can be often overly pessimistic about how social change happens and what has changed and what we've collectively achieved in such short a space of time. And moves to recuperate are already very reactive to social change that precedes it. They are never entirely successful as well, as we've seen just recently with people trying to kick the cops out of New York Pride and stuff like that, which was really good. We should take heart from a couple of trends, and this is particularly when talking about transgender publishing. So it seems like the biography no longer seems to be able to fill that social role that was expected of it. And you talk about Vivian Namaste, where she says, biography is the only genre in which trans women are allowed to speak. So this sort of publishing convention where we get these increasingly overfamiliar narratives of like an intrepid hero moving from ignorance to acceptance to personal flourishing. Trans people from this view overcome like psychological torments and social oppression as adversity to this thriving skillfully as they embrace their gendered destiny. Or all those, as these time-honored tropes have become like increasingly shop-worn and a bit stale, the knowing subversion of these all too familiar narratives. So they're all a bit more cheeky now, The hackneyed talk show confessional becomes like the pop literary self-deprecation.
2 years ago.
This isn't like
2
other
years.
memoirs, has been long superseded. I wasn't like other boys. The wink and the nod never really escapes. There was the formal conventions of the genre itself. 2, that transfeminism is no longer reduced to making plaintive appeals as to why transgender women ought to be allowed into the category of feminism and the category of woman, or as though trans women are a lesser or also round modality of feminine embodiment, as though we need to be learning and imitating our cisgender betters. And 3, that trans creativity is more expansive, varied, and widely read than it has been in recent years than any other time. So that people are undergoing this fairly epochal transformation in how they think and understand gender, that more and more trans people are finding the space and opportunity to express themselves, to express their joys, to have their needs met, to find love and pleasure in ways that would have been more marginalized and confined to more hidden corners of society. So as far as the collection helps towards that, I don't know, I hope it does. I have no pretensions about that. I mean, it's kind of just a book. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. I hope people who read it enjoy it. We worked really hard on it. But this is an attempt to apprehend in for these sort of changes in real time, these sort of immense social changes that we're all living through. And I at least hope it's successful at that, or provides comfort and reassurance to those who read it. Who wants to go next?
Okay, like I also send a heart like gay. So there is one question that has been haunting both queer, communist, and second wave feminist praxis, and it is that of what the hell gender actually is. And Notes Collective firstly define gender as the anchoring of a certain group of individuals in a specific sphere of social activities, and sex as the naturalization of gender's dual projection upon bodies, aggregating biological differences into discrete naturalized semblances. Gay describe it in Invert Journal as the subjective imprint of the symbolization of sexual difference and reframing the notion of metabolic rift.
They're saying right now that biological gender is a social construct. Are you guys catching this? They're basically talking about how biological gender is fake. And I know this person is speaking in flowery words, so this might be escaping people. But as a reminder, the goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary. They don't want men, they don't want women. Let's just go back. I want to listen again.
Social activities and sex.
If you haven't heard the word capitalism yet, you haven't been listening, because they said capitalism a long ass time ago, bro. So open your ears and listen. Oh, crapitalism. I don't know what that means. That just kind of makes it seem like you're trying to own the libs. So,
as the naturalization of gender's dual projection upon bodies, aggregating biological differences into discrete naturalized semblances. Gay describe it in Invert Journal as the subjective imprint of the symbolization of sexual difference and reframing the notion of metabolic rift, extending it to the dialectic of sex and gender, claims that nature, the sphere that capitalist society secretes as ideologically other than itself, functions for capital as an accumulation strategy. Further, Zoe Belinsky refers to gender, a love with nuclear family, as a vicarious institution for human capacities. What is gender for all of you as communist thinkers? Should we use the category of gender? And how can Kay's reading of gender as an accumulation strategy reshape transliberationist politics?
This should be good, actually.
So
okay. Hang on. A lot of people in the chat have been talking about things that don't remotely relate to what we're watching right now. I need all that shit to stop immediately, because I need everyone to listen to what's about to happen, because they're about to talk about how they conceptualize gender. So no more fucking shit posting, no more joking, no more any of that stuff. If you're not saying something that is directly related to what they're talking about, I'm going to time you out. I want everyone listening to this, okay?
Does Kay want to go first because we're bouncing off her essay?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I can just like, I can talk about this a little bit. So I think in that, so in that framing that I wrote in Gender as Accumulation Strategy, let me just say why I think it's important to phrase it in the way that I do, and maybe also why I disagree a little bit with Maya's phrasing in endnotes. Maya Gonzalez. And it's a great essay. People should read that essay. The Logic of Gender. It's a fantastic essay. People, like, whatever you think about it, people out in the world should read this essay. I frame gender in a slightly different way, in part because I think it's important to not believe that gender is purely the instrument of capital. Gender is one of the things, like there are many things that capital picks up and uses as it ascends to the world historical stage. Gender is one of these things, right? It like antedates capital. It antedates the capital relation. I think it will probably postdate the capital relation. It is a way, you know, I mean, like, what's my definition? The subjective imprint of the symbolization of sexual difference, right? People do have differently arranged bodies, and we experience that subjectively in different ways. Those are not rock solid. They're very immutable across place and time and in the course of a single life. But we have to understand both, like, the fact that this is not just something, it's not like a conspiracy that the capitalism forced on us. So, and it's not purely determinative of the separate spheres of social identity, although I think that Maya is correct to understand how
what we're seeing here, and this does happen, so I don't want to make it seem like it doesn't happen. What we're seeing here is disagreement among socialists about whether or not capitalism created the gender binary and the relationship between capitalism and the gender binary. And I want to make sure people hear this, because what I have heard most of the time from most socialists is that they believe that capitalism created the gender binary and the gender binary created the nuclear family, and they say it much more flowery than that. But that is not to say that they don't disagree sometimes, because they do disagree sometimes. And so right now we're hearing someone disagreeing, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. This person is saying, like, I don't actually really see that. Okay, they're allowed to have an opinion. But when I'm saying that capitalism created the gender binary, that's because what we hear most of the time. So I perceive it to be like the most contemporary thought.
Gender has been instrumentalized by capital, and this is what I mean by gender being an accumulation strategy. Gender has been instrumentalized in different ways by capital, both to constrain some people from working and to force other people to work.
So what they're saying is that, what this person is saying then is that they don't believe that gender created the gender, or that capitalism created the gender binary, but they believe that capitalism utilizes the gender binary. So they're saying, like, capitalism didn't create this thing, but is capitalism taking advantage of it to make sure that some people have more power than other people? Yup. So functionally, is it that different? Functionally, is it really something that, like, we need to enumerate every single time? I don't think so.
Right? And to and for some people to require them to do some work for wages and other work for no wages, right? So
men are the people who do work for wages, and women are the people who do work for no wages.
And so gender gives capital an instrument or a fuel or a form of social difference that it conveniently repurposes at different times in different places under different strategies, and et cetera, to as a lever for the accumulation of value. That's my claim, right? But that is not our fate. And that is, I think, something else that I feel powerfully to insist on. Yeah, and then I want
Tayton, I don't know what you mean by this. Same as whiteness, then I don't know what you mean by this. Can you chat in a clarification? You don't have to super chat it or anything. I just have no idea what you mean by this. In the social, I have an article about this on the Substack. You're welcome to read it. But in the socialist utopia, everyone's going to have an assigned job, like, that supports the utopia. Some of them may be college professors. Some of them may be doing other things. Like, there's nothing that says they'd all be college instructors. Tayton, do you have a clarification for this? Because I have no idea what you mean. I'm just going to wait for 1 second here. No, I don't agree with that, Tayton. So I'm not going to show it on the screen. I don't agree with your interpretation. I mean, you might be right, but I don't agree with it. Tayton, this is one of your times when you're overthinking things way too much. I'm going to break you of this habit yet.
I want to hear what Jules and I'll have to say.
Well, I know that Al's got a lot to say about this, so maybe I'll be brief. I find it striking, especially how in so many different circles, like even speaking about gender has become sort of controversial. And when I say so many different circles, I mean there's this argument that Jill Peterson makes in her book, which is very much building on other sort of like critical theorists in the same tradition as her.
Jules Gill Peterson is an associate professor at Johns Hopkins University. That's who they just referenced. Amber Christie on Rumble asked who assigns the jobs. The community assigns the jobs. And if you don't like your job, too bad. If you don't show up, you don't eat.
Yeah, there's two Juleses in trans theory at the moment. It's pretty wonderful. But yeah, she has this notion that gender is kind of like a conservative framework, and it's like a retrograde way of looking at things, which is also something I suppose you hear from certain Lacanians, especially the kind of Lacanian who only reads other Lacanians. They say that, talking about gender is this error and we should only talk about sex and sexuation, and gender was like a misstep. And so you have that kind of like critical theory, psychoanalytic theory, skepticism towards it. But of course, needless to say, you have like right-wing movements that even the word gender is treated as like a boo line. Like the notion that you would examine gender in a non-grammatical sense is taken to be like a source of outrage or something. And Judith Butler being burnt in effigy in Brazil when she came to speak at a totally unrelated conference was sort of a key flashpoint. In France, the protests against gay marriage had banners saying like "Say no to gender theory." It's a pretty global flashpoint at this stage. So I find it. I think on pragmatic lines as a revolutionary, this kind of makes me think that we should double down on gender. We should be like, well, what is the irritation that it's causing? And the simple answer there is there's this kind of denaturalization, which even opening this set of questions, like even opening this Pandora's box, seems to like present to people. But that's as far as I can go. I don't really have any particular, like all of these, I'm very pragmatic when it comes to these questions, as with so many others. There's all sorts of different definitions and discursive concerns and like arguments about foundationalism and whatever else. And like ultimately, I think the hubbub and the kind of chaos that this whole debate has caused is sort of like something with value in itself. You know what I mean? Sorry if that's a bit of a trollish response, but.
Full disclosure, I didn't actually read Kay's essay until we'd submitted our book, because I saw the title of the essay and I was like, well, I want to hash out my own thoughts before I read what's Kay's written, because it sounds like we converge on a lot, and I didn't want to like muddle it all up together. And we actually do converge on a lot, the way we talk about gender, the way we write about gender, the way we think about gender. And you see this, so like The idea that there was this once reliable gender order where men were men and women were women, and now things are more muddled, more fraught, and may seem like a contemporary reactionary concern. But in truth, these anxieties are generally quite perennial. During times of great social stress or social change, these have been common complaints, with the effeminate trans feminine and the emasculating masculine figure standing as the example of the dawn of a more decadent social age, or occasionally a more enlightened gender dispensation. And so we see this in far-right propaganda, so essentially disgusted that anyone would transgress the bounds of the supposedly fixed biological construction of sex, on demonizing certain trans women in particular for failing to live up to an idealized performance of femininity, while at the same time trying to guarantee changes in the law that make gender transition as legally adverse as possible.
That's
to access public
actually
spaces.
actually, Mike, as a former marathoner, I understand this. Yeah, that's about where you are, bro. That's about where you are. But remember, you're gonna get over that hump. Your body's gonna switch from burning carbs to burning fat, and you're gonna get a second wind, and you're probably gonna finish the marathon. But you just gotta hang in there, and you keep coming back to Socialism Saturday, or you watch my midweek streams. That will help you a lot more. And yeah, it's depressing, and yeah, it sucks, and yeah, it's a lot, but you're gonna understand the truth. You're gonna understand what's actually going on when you're done, and you're gonna be in a better position than most people. So marathoning sucks. It's hard. You want to quit? Don't quit, Mike. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
To participate in public life, men are men and women are women, and there you shall remain. So why is that? And why is this such a perennial concern for state authorities and conservative forces alike? I think this is partly because class relations are never as dried out and aloof as more orthodox Marxists would have you believe, but by necessarily implicate theories of gender, race, sexuality. So the history of sexual difference is inextricably a history of contracts. These contracts may be entirely formal, informal, but explicit, but they're forged with your doctors, your family, your school, your employers, and with the state. So what other accounts of transgender lives have identified as a transition in epistemic regimes in the social, scientific, and medical understanding of gender? There's a big emphasis on this in a lot of the literature. You kind of have the 1950s where the clinic suddenly comes on, and then transgender comes, and blah, blah, blah. So what other accounts would emphasize this?
What we're hearing right now, and this is something I actually hear a lot from Ella O'Rourke, so it doesn't surprise me. Right now, we're in the word salad stage of the presentation. They're not really saying anything that's, I think, valuable to comment on, but this is just what you get when you watch Socialism. So I want to encourage everyone, if you're feeling, we're about halfway through the presentation, so if you're still here, congratulations, you made it. May I recommend alcohol? Alcohol can really make a difference. If you have a craft, that can make a difference. I'm playing with slime right now to occupy myself as I listen. But this is just the reality of watching Socialism, is sometimes we're going to go through sessions where like they don't say anything that's of value, and we need to persevere, because if we don't, they're going to say something. The minute that we look away, they're going to say something important. So we train for this.
Identifies like the weighty historical corollary of this transition in property regimes, working patterns, unwaged labor, family structures, and domestic life. Transition kind of requires an eruption in all of these, every single facet in your social life. So I think this is why political anxiety about the breakdown of these thresholds of exploitation.
Oh, look, how do I know this is a conservative? How do I know this is a conservative that thinks they're being a smartass? Would these people be happier if they just had boyfriends? Or would they try to radicalize them too? Yeah, I know you're being snarky. Bro, these people probably have more sex than you do. That's reality. These people usually don't. These are queer Marxists. Queer Marxists don't believe in monogamous relationships. These people probably have more sex than you do. They probably have more partners than you do. They're doing just fine. This is not a matter of like they're not happy or like, I swear to God.
That they are increasingly difficult to verify, or are being directly challenged, or are not being enforced hard enough is a particular concern. So rather than read through social reproduction theory, which we might talk about elsewhere. I wanted to take a look at capitalist society through what Angela Mitropoulos calls the economic
I hope you enjoy it,
organization
Maria.
of genealogy. So a genealogical ordering,
That sounds
a
delightful.
political theological account of capitalist society, where the nexus of race, gender, class, and sexuality and nation are constituted through the premise of a properly productive household. So the household is pretty important. So the language of moral economy and conservative refrain appeals to underlying fundamental values is this euphemism for a more or less stable capitalist futurity. And this is a future premised on the restoration or persistence of genealogical lines of composition or the orderly transfer of property, debt, and authority across time. So under this lens, we can sort of appreciate that gender, race, and sexuality are not discrete, neatly separable categories. They are not analysis to be pulled apart and put back together and perhaps reassemble. They are different means of talking about the same social object, alternate perspectives on the same social question: property, exploitation, social order. So impositions of gendered expectations and racial discrimination are also claims about where the acceptable threshold of exploitation ought to lie and on what terms, whether your labor is waged or unwaged, whether it is compensated well or poorly. Even the type of work you do or do not is contingent on your ability to embody a socially plausible form of masculinity or femininity within boundaries set by what your society understands your racial background to be. So making demands on time and surplus labor, organizing speculative operations into contractual bonds, underwriting the differential extension of credit and life chances to various classes and strata, apportioning labor between sectors and households, and demarcating certain modes of comportment and expression as socially valorized and compensated, or as demonized, as excluded, and open to intense forms of socially validated violence. Capitalism has this inextricable process of variable differentiation, discrimination, and compensation. And this, as far as I would understand it, is what constitutes gendered class oppression, and not necessarily class itself, and not necessarily gender itself, which is what's really good about Kay's essay, where she distinguishes between gender and gendered oppression.
What she just said is capitalism causes gendered oppression by providing compensation for some types of jobs and no compensation for other types of jobs. And that is what forms the gender binary or the patriarchy. Mike, it doesn't matter how many views this video has. What matters is that this is lectured about at every college across the country. These people speak at conferences all the time. This stuff is much more popular than you think it is. This stuff is much more dangerous than you think it is. Like, the reason we're watching it is I understand that you're grieving right now. And I understand you're in the bargaining phase, and I understand you're trying to convince yourself that these people don't have an audience, but that would be wrong. Every single attack you see on parental rights today, this is where it comes from. Gender ideology in schools. This is where it comes from. This is you don't think they have the power to, bro. Now I'm starting to get fucking pissed. I understand you're in a mourning phase, bro. I really do. But when I say these are the people pushing gender ideology into schools, what I mean is these are the people pushing gender ideology into schools. When I say that these are the people responsible for every attack on parental rights you see in the country today, what I mean is these are the people who are responsible for every attack you see on parental rights today. So to actually consider for a moment that these are just some random people on some random website and they don't have the power, they are showing us every single day and have been for years that they do have the power to push their ideas. They are winning. They've been winning for a long fucking time. I understand you're in the bargaining phase right now and you're like, but maybe they're just not that powerful. No, bro, no. Because if they weren't that powerful, then we wouldn't be seeing upwards of 44% of kids identifying as genderqueer in schools. If they weren't that powerful, then there wouldn't be attacks on parental rights going on all over the country where kids are taken away from their parents if their parents refuse to transition them. And you guys can try to rationalize it and say, they only have 32 views on that video on YouTube, and therefore they have no power. But you, like, it's happening right in front of us right now. It is happening all over the place right now. And there's no amount. And I'm sorry, bro. I really am. I know you're new. I am sorry. I am sorry that your conservative influencers lied to you. I am sorry that your conservative influencers didn't tell you the truth. I really am. But we have evidence of their power every single day right in front of us. And it's not even unclear. These are the people that, this is the origin point, not these people specifically, but the people that they run with. This is the origin point for these ideas. And I'm trying to slap you upside the head right now because I'm trying to push you out of the bargaining phase. Because when you're in the bargaining phase, what you're going to do is you're going to rationalize any way out of it. There is no way out of this until you face it. This is what it is. They don't care. They don't care. Let's see, I had a super chat come in. They're legislating teachers. They literally, there is legislation in multiple states that allows teachers to keep secrets from parents. It comes from here. This is where it comes from. You're allowed to ask questions, but like what you're doing, like what my recommendation, and again, I don't want to scare you away. My recommendation is that you need to just sink into this and listen. Because your brain's trying to rationalize right now and you're trying to explain it away because it's scary. Bro, I know it's scary. I do. I went through what you're going through about 2 years ago. And I get it. I really, really do. When I went through this, I went into a deep depression in which I was on the internet while being clinically depressed. Believe me, I understand. But this is what it is. And they do have control and they do have power, and there is no rationalization. There is nothing that is going to change that. Yeah, Mike, we've all been there. Let's everyone send Mike some love because Mike's going through his moment of like realization of how bad things really are. And that's hard, and I understand that. But many people in the chat have been where you are, okay? A lot of people here have been where you are.
Because you read a lot of Marxist feminism and sometimes.
Did I get over my depression? I don't know if you're being funny, if you're being serious, but I'll try to explain. I'll explain as though it's serious. When I accepted that we are totally and irrevocably effed and there is nothing that we can do to stop it, there is a freedom that comes with that. So I'm not clinically depressed anymore. So that's good. But I perceive it now to be more a question of like this is preparing for what's inevitable. Yeah, and Mike, just wait until you realize wait until you realize how much the influencers lie to you, and then you're going to start to get angry. This is kind of where I am. I'm pissed. I mean, this is all out of our control, right? And so we we can't control whether or not this happens. We can't control whether or not anyone shows up to fight. We can't control if people in our lives will listen. Listen, bro, I get pissed off every single time I see a conservative influencer lying to their audience about this. But I can't control them, and I can't control when they lie to their audiences because they didn't bother to understand what was going on, or they didn't care, or any of that stuff. I still get angry about that. But like, you have to accept that there are a lot of things that are outside of your control and focus on the things that you can control. And the fact is, you still have the ability to live a fucking awesome life right now. We aren't in the socialist utopia yet. Go out, live your best life. Say I believe we only have like 25 years left at absolute max. So why are you wasting time? Why would you focus on like all of the things that are going to happen that are going to suck? Because there's going to be a lot of suck at some point. We're going to go through in the next 25 years an awful lot of suck. That's true. But there's a lot of things that don't suck. And there's a lot of ways that you can find joy, and you can find love, and you can find happiness, and you can find excitement and elation, and all of those things. Whatever you want to feel is out there for you. So if you know that we're going to go through a lot of suck at some point, then why wouldn't you want to get as much of that in now as you possibly could? Like I said, like, I don't even view this as like trying to stop this at this point, because I don't think this is stoppable at this point. I really don't. Maybe I'll be surprised, but I don't think this is stoppable. But what I can do is say, okay, well, I'm here. Like, I'm going to do in the meantime, I'm going to do whatever. As long as I can be on the internet talking about this stuff, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to say what I want to say. And fuck anyone who tries to tell me differently. So live your best life, bro. Nothing's stopping you. Rottweiler said, these people control academia, medical institutions, library associations, and are prolific book publishers. Social media presence is irrelevant. Yep. And what I would say, guys, is if you have people in your life that have been listening to the wrong people, just like Mike is saying, he's been listening to the wrong people, bring them here. I'll teach them. I'll show them. The only way to listen, guys, the influencers are never going to cover my content. They have made this very, very clear to me over the past couple of years. They are never going to cover my content. They are never going to share it with their audiences. The only way this information gets out to people is if normal people just like you share it out with your friends and family. You bring them here. I will teach them. Show them the clips that I make. Show them the information. We can't control that the influencers are paid shills for a political agenda. But you can control if you bring a friend over here for a Socialism Saturday. You can control if you share the Substack. You can control those things. Go around them.
And you're like, wait a minute, is she saying that women are...
I have a question over on Rumble. Do I believe the influencers are lying, or are they in denial? Well, they're not in denial. They're not in denial, I'll tell you that. They are either lying or they are willfully ignorant. James Lindsay is lying. Flat out. Mike, I've actually thought about this. No joke. James Lindsay is lying. There is no way in this universe that James Lindsay does not understand this, given how much stuff he has read on these topics. Moms for Liberty are willfully ignorant because they're grifting shills. Most conservative influencers, I think, are ignorant because they refuse to actually look into and do their due diligence about what they're talking about. And so they might not be lying by like the specific definition of the term of lying, but they're not doing their jobs of making sure they understand what's going on and articulating it to their audience. And when it's presented to them, it's usually too overwhelming that they just don't even look at it and they don't even deal with it. Because really what conservative influencers are looking for is that is what is going to fire up their audience, so their audience gives them money. So conservative influencers are looking for like what feeds the talking points, not what the truth is, just what feeds their talking points. What does James Lindsay have to gain? Money, 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 power, status. James Lindsay wouldn't have been lifted up to the level that he is if he didn't play the game. What do they have to gain? Money, guys. Money. Status. When you tell conservatives things they don't want to hear, most of the time, they make you the enemy. The very best way to make money off of conservatives, or I mean like right-leaning people, is to tell them exactly what they want to hear. They will give you trust me, man, I lived this. They will give you a lot of fucking money if you just tell them what they want to hear. So what do they have to gain? Money. Conservative influencers gain nothing by solving the problem. If they solve the problem, their money goes away. Just give the audience what they want. That's what they have to gain. Anyway.
Women because they do the washing up, and you're like, no, that can't be what she says. And then you're like, actually, that kind of is what she says.
I actually had the exact same experience as Elle this essay, Gender as Accumulation Strategy, originally appeared in the first issue of Invert Journal.
I need to be paying closer attention.
When my friend Joni, who's one of the editors on the Invert editorial collective, came to Vienna, she was like, oh yeah, basically like you and Kay are writing the same essay in 2 different registers. And because my piece is called Transsexual Solidarity, and this one has like, especially this section, Transsexuals in the Hiddener Abode. So it's like they're very different essays, but they sort of end up at the same point somehow, which was not because they were written together at all. I don't think I'm not sure we'd even communicated directly at this point in time. But somehow a few different avenues of thought are converging in some quite nice ways, is the way I put it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I read your essay with a great degree of pleasure and even a thrill. I mean, maybe just to pull out one of those words, I'm wearing this shirt that's like the Transsexual Menace, which for people who are watching this who don't know is an activist group started by Ricky Ann Wilkins. But I think that there's something like really good about thinking about like the about reintroducing this bodily dimension and thinking about how it relates to the how it figures in the production and reproduction of social particularity and difference that, as Elle notes, furnishes capital with the tools for unequal for the ideological and legal and material unequal distribution of labor, of access to resources, of availability to being disposed of or incarcerated or deported.
Oh God,
box, right?
That was so loud.
And then also it discloses certain dimensions for it discloses certain dimensions for our political and social lives that we can think about, like, how do I intervene in this? How do I act upon this? And so that, which is one of the reasons why I like the word transsexual. It's one of the things that I got, Jules, from your essay. So I'm glad that this thought is kind of is converging, as you say.
Great. So, feminization. All of us here today are somehow feminized subjects, and we face a transphobic scenery that considers femininity.
I'm sorry for everyone who just went deaf. I didn't control it. But Carlin, you're not serious when you say when you say memes. What is a woman and Jesus don't work? Are you? Isn't Gen Z super concerned? Oh, fuck. I heard just the other day someone was saying like all the boys in Gen Z are conservative and all the girls are liberal, and I was like. Oh God, I know. Yeah, do you guys know why what is a woman means nothing to these people? Because these people don't want women to exist, Matt Walsh. These people don't want women to exist. They don't want men to exist. They don't want women to exist. So thinking you're owning the libs by going, what is a woman? What is a woman? You can't say what a woman is. What is a woman? It's like they don't want women to exist, you morons. They don't care. They don't care what the definition is. No one cares. They literally talk about abolishing the gender binary over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, we do need to do disability studies. We do. I have some stuff pulled up that we can watch next week.
When it is present outside an FAB embodiment, to be merely a manifestation of misogynistic oppression. On the other hand, some queer radical perspectives embrace male and non-binary femininity as an empowering tool to denaturalize the imperialist gender binary. Confronting both reductionist insights, Imbert described feminization as bearing on your second skin the mark of devaluation, which is indeed quite valuable to capital, and adds that, understood as a process of immiseration, feminization can be therefore treated as an expansive category, defined by but not confined to women. Thus, I wanted to ask you, how do you all understand feminization, and how does your personal feminized experience converge with the political aim to end gender division of labor?
Nice, easy question. I think I've got quite an eccentric direction I want to take this one into, so I want someone else to answer first before I do my thing.
Maybe I can take a stab at this. Jules, I'm very excited for what this is going to be. I want to, I mean, in answering this, I think we can, I want to just kind of keep thinking with something that Elle threw out there, which is one way that we can think about this is that gender is not, as I have seen somewhere speculated, a property relation, but it is a labor relation. Not in pure, not purely determinative, but it is gender spells out certain relationships to certain kinds of labor, waged and unwaged, and indeed to unemployment or unemployability, in ways that are subject to transformation and so on. So this seems important as we confront feminization, when we can talk about this as the process. To a certain extent, is this just the process of continually reproducing an unequal division of labor? Well, I don't know if I want to be so exhaustive about it, but it's something like that. One of the ways that I think we can think about this in a specifically trans register is I think we can push back against the I don't know. I think that we can push back against the stance that certain embodiments, certain ways of being in the world are specifically confrontational towards or antagonistic of dominant arrangements of gender. I mean, this is kind of what, like, I beat up on him because he's an easy target, but like Paul Prezziato, you know, like really pulled a fast one on all these fucking on, you know, like the feminist press who translated his work, and I mean, like Ellen, Jules, you guys like call him what, endocrinological
romanticist.
Oh, that's so good. You know, like this motherfucker who actually believes that you are, by intervening in your molecular structure, you're undoing capitalism. Bullshit, right? That's just bullshit. It's so offensive. And he just grifted that grift into a pretty substantial degree, Paul Prezziato, that's right, into a pretty substantial degree of like cultural capital, and like people still read this. Cis people still read this. I don't know a single trans person takes this shit seriously, but there is a certain, I don't think anymore.
Then you're not listening to them, bro. And you're not listening.
First, as I say, made the jump to hyperspace, which is going on about a decade ago. There were definitely people around me who had what I would describe as, it was very particular to the time, it was very particular to New York, but you can imagine certain versions of this elsewhere. People around me who were like, oh, the best that, like, you know, basically like testosterone is like, like taking tea is like this like magic juice that just like, you know, fixes your life, solves your problems, makes you like a hot fuck machine, and you can also you know, it reframes your gender to make you somehow more oppositional to forms of domination, oppression, exploitation. And you know, this is this very naive, very immediatist understanding of, and you can imagine a different version of this, right? You can imagine a version of this that I think some people, in fact, have pursued in different places. That is like, oh, you know, gender transition period is somehow doing something anti-capitalist, is somehow doing something that's like, again, anti.
Hang on, I got a super chat and then my whole chat jumped. Brooklyn! What is a woman followed Marsha Blackburn's failed test when Ketanji Brown Jackson shut her down? I'm not a biologist. Blackburn doesn't speak socialist. Conservatives got hella played. Yeah, well, exactly. And this is why, like Matt Walsh doesn't get it. Someone said in the chat earlier, like, Matt Walsh found a problem, but what Matt Walsh failed to do was actually understand the root cause of that problem. And so Matt Walsh did something, but it did not solve for the problem. It didn't solve for the problem in any way, shape, or form. In fact, like, when leftists think about like Matt Walsh, they kind of laugh at him. I know this because like one of the things I went to, one of the things I went undercover at, they were talking about Matt Walsh. I mean, they were like, and they weren't actually like Matt. It was like more like, oh, silly boy. Silly boy. That's how leftists talk about Matt Walsh behind closed doors. Like, silly boy. Silly. Oh, he wants us to define what a woman is. Like, you know, it doesn't matter to us, bro. It's like he failed to understand what he was talking about, and then he made a whole movie that also failed to understand what he was talking about, and then he showed it to a bunch of conservatives who are like, yeah, oh, the libs. And then it got played in they got used in Congress, where the good Republican conservative reps are like, we're going to own the libs today, but none of them understood what they were talking about. But they're winning. They're winning. They're winning, bro. Don't you guys know they're all winning? But Matt Walsh made a lot of money from that. The Daily Wire made a lot of money from that. Got famous all over the shows because they owned the libs. And then nothing changed, did it? What has changed? And I told people this was the case when it happened. And they said, Carlin, you're just bitter because Matt Walsh made a movie and you didn't make a movie. So the only reason you're saying that Matt Walsh's movie is completely ineffective is because you hate Matt Walsh. Well, what has changed? I'm being serious. What has changed since the release of What is a Woman? Have things gotten better? Have these people slowed down? Or have they gotten worse? What did Matt Walsh's movie do? If Matt Walsh's movie had actually changed things, then I would be the first to go be like, yes, bro, yes, good job, good fucking job. I would be the very first person to say it. But the fact of the matter is that Matt Walsh's movie changed absolutely nothing, except Matt Walsh got richer and he got more followers on Twitter. What problem did it solve for? Nothing. But they're winning! They're winning! They're winning, bro! Trust me, bro. Pinky swear.
Antagonist or oppositional. And that's sort of not good enough. You know, like, so I just think, you know, as we can think about like different ways of like being in the world and how these are not supposed to be like to embody political opposition or to enact political opposition, like that's clearly like not good enough, in part because feminization is this process that is just of a different scale, you know. It is part of the massive scalar process by which capital compels some people to act in certain ways and restricts others from acting in others. So that's, you know, like it is a social force. And it is one of the things when we talk about like abolition, right? This process is, I think, not like femininity, but this process
I know,
of
I'm
this
such
like
a whore.
capitalist like feminization as a labor relation. Like that is one of the objects, I think, of abolition.
Have you got anything to say, Al?
Yeah, I mean, like you do have the like idea of feminization or the second skin, which
Who wants to tell him?
I think that's
Who wants to
Rosemary
tell him?
Hennessy's idea of gender as objection and stuff like that. So I think like feminization is kind of this ever-looming threat of being emasculated for a great people, a portion of people, being dropped down lower on the rungs of exploitation, of having your prior conception marked by injury and being degraded to be treated as a woman in a sense. And there is a bit in our book which Michelle O'Brien writes really good on. She's writing about Alan Berub's conception of queer work and applying it further to trans people and trans work. And she discusses what Alan Berube, one of his case studies is like this cruise liner and the people who worked on the cruise liner. And you had white men, black men, Asian men, and the problem was that everyone was so white supremacist that they didn't want to have like black serving staff. So they hired gay men, and gay men found this sort of niche in industry of this feminized work where they could act and have certain socialities together. And black men also found this because you know they didn't want white men doing this sort of degrading work. And they actually found a way to express their love and express homoerotic cultures, and also formed unions, Communist Party unions, and they lifted a banner saying no race baiting, red baiting, or queer baiting. And I think this is really interesting. And what I loved about Kay's speech just then was she just fucking nailed that motherfucker. Paul Ricardo. Yeah, I mean, this is bullshit. You cannot really say that this or that or any sort of ecological stance is necessarily antagonistic to capital. I mean, you have to do a lot of work. I mean, I think the one thing that I really like about Andrea Long Chu, like one of the few things in that dialogue in Transgender Studies Quarterly, she's talking about like how queer and like the linguistic travel. So these people writing on trans stuff, and they're writing about trans stuff, and they're doing all this sort of exhaustive stuff on trans stuff. and they're like, oh, trans is so revolutionary and it's magical, and oh, you're like a little cyborg or blah blah blah. And then she's like copies and pastes and goes, right, but 20 years ago she was writing the same thing about queer and being queer, and queer is this necessarily antagonistic relationship to capital, and that's just true. I mean, just people writing so much bullshit. But I really want to hear what Jules has got to say. I think she's gonna.
There's two passages in that interview you're mentioning are literally interchangeable. the trans versus queer. Yeah, people. Yeah, this trans is an all-purpose. Trans is transcendent. Stand-in, right?
Yeah.
I can't stand that stuff.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it's.
So this is actually interesting, because this is where they talk about, like, some queer Marxists will say, and I think this is the majority, and this is this stance that I take, that trans means transcend or transform, not transition, because queer wants to abolish the gender binary, trans wants to uphold the gender binary. But this is interesting because Jules, who wrote a book or edited a book called Transgender Marxism, Jules doesn't like this. This is another instance of them disagreeing. So what they're going to say is, like, there are some people that believe that trans is transform or transcendent, which I think many of them do, the queer Marxists do, but Jules doesn't like this.
The trans versus queer. Yeah, people. Yeah, this trans is an all-purpose. Trans is transcendent. Stand-in, right?
Yeah.
I can't stand that stuff.
No.
Yeah, it's ass.
Spaniards invented it. Okay, that's what we're saying in chat, but I can't confirm or deny it. Okay, so firstly on Paul Preciado. Well, this is exactly the problem. Like, transsexuality, like the history of the endocrine system, hormones as like a social field, whatever you want to call it. That's something I'm really here for, but it's exactly the romanticism. Yeah, this idea where like simultaneously testosterone, endogenous testosterone at least, is like the fuel of the revolution, but then it's also a party drug. He's got an interview where he's like, yeah, tea is the ultimate party drug. As if we're just going to dose up on it and go to Berlin.
Testosterone, and again, Jules, we're going to be ethically honest about this. Jules is talking about someone else. Jules is not articulating Jules's opinion, but I still think it's interesting and relevant. Jules is saying that there's this one queer Marxist dude who they don't like, who says that tea is the ultimate party drug. Testosterone is the ultimate party drug. Did I ever finish Transgender Marxism? No, I didn't. I do need to read Transgender Marxism, though. I do actually want to read it. I mean, there's some crazy shit in that book. Like, legitimately, that book is crazy. But it's also like, it's like, if you guys think listening to them is difficult, then reading them is even worse. Thank you, Beth. I appreciate you.
And have a great time, and people do that for sure, but it's
Beth, remember when we were all excited? We were like, we're gonna read Transgender Marxism in like 3 weeks. We even set a deadline, and we were like, we're all gonna, and Brooklyn did this too, we were all like, we're gonna read Transgender Marxism together, and then we didn't. But now, but it's okay, because exactly now we'll all understand Transgender Marxism much better. Our eyes were bigger than our stomach. Yeah, everyone ordered a copy of Transgender Marxism, and then no one read it.
in a way, it's trying to have it on both sides. It's something fun, it's something cool, and also it's something ethically transformative and revolutionary.
I have actually been thinking about this idea of like the coloring book. And it seems like a lot of people want a coloring book, but maybe I should make a coloring book that is also a dictionary at the same time, where it's like on every page, not only do you have something you can color that's like Unwoke, you also have the Socialist dictionary at the same time. It can be both. Would people like that? I think that's a good idea. Does the Socialist Party of the USA support transgender Marxism? It makes no difference. It makes no difference whether or not they do. No difference at all. The people in this video are not niche. See, Mike, this is where Mike shouldn't feel bad, because everyone goes through this bargaining stage when it comes to this stuff. Guys, again, art. The people in the ideas in this video are the origin point for every attack on parental rights that we're seeing in the country today. They are the origin point for gender ideology in schools. So these are not just niche little people off on the internet somewhere. These are the people that are driving all the crazy gender shit that you see in the world today. So it makes no difference if the Socialist Party of the United States supports them or not, because that is not how they gain their power. They gain their power by taking over the institutions. I don't want to make anything for kids.
And it reads like marketing copy, to be honest with you. It's like the testosterone. There isn't a testosterone.
I found a diamond art painting for. Oh, okay. I can't wait to see that, Beth. I do enjoy a good diamond art painting.
Producing industry, but if there was one, then they couldn't really have done better than his PR work. Anyway, that bit of bitchiness aside, I think there's kind of like, to get a bit more analytic about it, there's kind of like three things with feminization, and one is the Michelle O'Brien and Kate Griffiths explores this elsewhere. I don't think their essay in this collection does so much, but yeah, there's like feminization of like the rise of
Griffin is an insane
pink collar, and when I say the rise, I mean the fact that pink collar jobs like nursing, teaching, and yeah, other kind of like caring labor and whatever are often some of the only steady jobs available to anybody, irrespective of gender, in many different contexts. In many urban contexts, your prospects are basically pink collar work or law enforcement of one kind or another. So this is like, that's the first meaning of feminization. Forgive me for getting a bit analytic. The second meaning is this kind of vaguer sort of like late capitalism subjectification thing, which I guess is mostly associated with de Koon's theory of the young girl, if we're talking communist theory. I suppose previously Nina Power, although she's somewhat disgraced at the moment. But yeah, the de Koon, it's really like one of my least favorite essays. I often say like, communism would be a much better movement if everyone had read de Koon's theory of bloom and nobody had read de Koon's theory of a young girl. But like, I don't know, at least if they'd read both of them, maybe that would have been better. But that's my kind of like esoteric theory bitching. But then there's sort of like this third meaning, which is I guess what was alluded to in the question. And that's kind of what I would like to like, I guess that's what I would like to get this conversation around, like kind of twist this conversation towards, is this issue of radical feminism and like the issue of like the subordination of the feminine to the masculine, or like, yeah, this notion of like femininity as captivity, or femininity is something which we're like coerced into, which like simultaneously we're obliged to fulfill femininity, and then also once we fulfilled it, we then kind of debased ourselves and subordinated ourselves. So this is like, I guess what this opens up is sort of like, there's always this issue with radical feminism where simultaneously like radical feminism was a movement that clearly like enabled a lot of what trans politics as we know it is sort of inconceivable without the breakthroughs that the feminist movement more generally achieved. Like, yeah, the amount of denaturalizing and the amount of like overturning of previously kind of naturalized and elevated orders which feminist movements around the world achieved is clearly like preconditional with trans politics as we know it. However, also there's an obvious like, yeah, there's an obvious antagonism that exists as well, which I feel like actually got covered by transgender Marxism more than I'd conceived of. Like, I don't think either Al or myself had planned we're going to be like, oh, we're going to have this new collection about transgender Marxism, which is going to be all about how revolutionary trans politics can like replace feminism like, or come to terms. You know what I mean? That was not our plan. But when we were doing the index is actually when we realized that like loads of chapters are like engaging in radical feminism on different levels and in different ways and making some pretty different arguments. But it's
revolutionary. I remember this from last time. Revolutionary politics. Revolutionary trans politics can replace feminism. And she's saying, and again, we're going to be ethically honest about this. Jules is saying that it wasn't their intention to create something that in which revolutionary trans politics would replace feminism, but when they saw it all laid out, they were like, oh shit, revolutionary trans politics has replaced feminism. They realized they could replace feminism. What does it mean? Pop quiz for the chat. What does it mean if radical revolutionary trans politics replaces feminism? What does that mean? And we'll listen to this again. What does that mean? They can negate all gender. Yep. That the queer, the Q, can replace all the other letters. They're abolishing the gender binary, so no feminism. They're abolishing gender, so there's no need for feminism. No gender. The gender binary will cease to exist. The end of the gender binary, no binary. The Q took over the rainbow flag. It gets rid of the gender binary. Feminism will be discarded because feminism upholds the gender binary. The gender binary will be abolished. Be free from gender. Get the capitalist ideology out of feminism. Well, would it be getting it out of feminism though? Because feminism would cease to exist. So I don't agree with that, the way you phrase that, Tate. And try again. There is no gender under radical trans revolutionary politics, thus there is no feminism. There's no gender binary under radical trans politics. So it would abolish gender. The capitalistic gender binary is defeated, or the gender binary or the capitalism that uses the gender binary as a tool, depending on which interpretation you have. No more women's rights, no more women's sports, because it just all blends together. Abolishing the gender binary. Yeah, it'll get to the family as well. Women no longer exist. Men no longer exist too. It's not just the women who are going to be abolished. The men are going to be abolished too, because the gender binary is made up of men and women, and they want to abolish both. I understand why you're saying this, and it's close, but so you are correct in that they want to destabilize anything that's normative, and you are correct that they want to make their queer concept of gender to be the normal social construct. But what they would argue is that their version is not a social construct. They would argue that that binary gender is the social construct, and they want to get rid of that. But like super close, and it's complicated, so I get it. Well, that's not true. That's not true. They're pushing trans men, and they're pushing trans. Well, I guess they would be trans men into men's spaces too. And I know that because there was a thing in New Hampshire about this. Literally, like this week, there was a thing in New Hampshire about like a little girl that's identifying as a boy that's utilizing the boys' bathrooms, and the boys in the school are like uncomfortable with that. Sadly, the little trans boy is a daughter or son, whatever the fuck, of a school board member. So they are actually doing this. It's just not getting coverage. This is unbelievably false. And Steve, you've really been around long enough to know better. This is retarded, bro. You've descended into the land of retardia. This is not hinged into reality at all. Sorry.
Or myself at times, we're going to be like, oh, we're going to have this new collection about transgender Marxism, which is going to be all about how revolutionary trans politics can like replace feminism, like, or come to terms. You know what I mean? That was not our plan. But when we were doing the index is actually when we realized that like
New Boston,
loads of chapters are like engaging in radical feminism on different levels and in different ways and making some pretty different arguments. But it's almost like the collection was unintentionally kind of shot through with this concern of responding to radical feminist critiques. And to talk about like why that is, I think like it's not unusual for trans people of whatever gender position you end up. Yeah, I would say trans people have disproportionately spent time in feminist movements, or at least the trans people who are politically engaged. This is like disproportionately the kind of mode of political organizing we've come through. And I suppose to get into We Want It All, or like in We Want It All, that's really like completely unmistakable. Like it appears sort of like in, we've already talked about Amy Marvin's other one, the first trans poem, but there's this one, Hey Guys, which is like possibly my favorite and not coincidentally clearly like the bitchiest poem in the collection, which is kind of like very specifically skewering this kind of like NGO curious gentrifier sort of like the kind of like soft boy, tender queer, actually kind of passive aggressive exclusionary figure who you encounter like a million times in any kind of trans circle, and specifically like towards the top of these hierarchies, which these scenes tend to attract. And like I think that's that example is kind of like what, like the worst of what trans politics kind of replaces radical feminism with, because this figure is like, he's like fearful, or they are fearful of like mean girl.
No, Mike, you're taking a conservative view of individualism, not a queer view of individualism. They don't care if people have tattoos. They don't care how people wear their hair. Those are things conservatives care about. It's not things that they care about. What they care about is, are you assimilating to be part of the collective Borg? Are you a good comrade? Are you doing all of the things you need to do to collectively care for each other? Are you accepting all their bullshit? It's not about tattoos or haircut.
And like nasty women who are like, you know, ruining this world with softness. But like, but yeah, elsewhere in the collection, I think especially like the figure of, Adrienne Rich is like, Adrienne Rich specifically seems to come up like repeatedly. Like there's this poem Acknowledgements by Ari Barnius, which is just about, that's a quote from the Transsexual Empire, right? Which is kind of like spliced together down into a single word about how Rich had really like helped this kind of transphobic masterpiece come into being. And then obviously there's this more forgiving, it's a blog post, right, by Bryn Kelly, which I was quite surprised to see in here, because this blog post had really left like a huge impression on me. And it's interesting to like find it in a poetry collection, but somehow it sort of like really fits into the whole work, right? Because it's like, it's this more forgiving perspective about both like Rich herself and also that whole vein of like radical lesbianism, I suppose, like, which like, even as someone who's not like personally invested in that identity, like it's interesting that like even trans women who are not personally like involving themselves or like directly focused on like building up a lesbianism, like we can't kind of escape this orbit of like the sort of trans lesbian possibility, like the once the attraction and the impossibility of this kind of dialogue between two types of a radical dyke, right? The sign male and the sign female. This is something which like, there's this kind of like melancholy relationship which a lot of trans people have towards radical feminism, where it's simultaneously like, it's clearly not fit for purpose. You know, these like, these hey guy types have completely taken over. Like there's no kind of hope of like reviving this tendency or this tradition. It wouldn't even seem like a righteous thing, like if we tried to do that, right? But on the other hand, we can't sort of get away from that history so easily. Like there's sort of one type of unusual, controversial woman kind of like always ending up in dialogue with another. Anyway, so that's so yeah, I'd love to chat about radical feminism, or like the so-called second wave.
Yeah, I think that's very beautiful. I mean, I'm glad that you brought up Bryn's essay, which was originally a blog post. A friend of hers a close friend of hers wrote, who's also in the collection, wrote and was like, I think that Bryn would have both scoffed and been quite complimented at being included in a volume of radical trans poetics. Like, she probably would have.
All right, guys, we are coming up on 20 minutes left of the presentation. It's been a lot tonight. It's been a lot. Mike is having a transformative process in my chat right now. But Mike, I know you're not the only one having a transformative process, because people over on Rumble are struggling too. I just want to remind everyone, we do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Please make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on, whether that be YouTube, X, or Rumble. I also do stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, so 1 hour earlier during the week. And during the week, we watch lighter stuff, okay? The really hardcore stuff is saved for Socialism Saturday. And sometimes we do a little bit of socialism midweek, but we do tend to watch like lighter things midweek. So if you want some extra socialism and leftist ideology, come and join us for any live stream in the middle of the week. If you want to join my supporter Discord, then head over to carlin.substack.com and sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. My work is 100% completely funded by you. My Substack is where I break down the woke ideology in plain English. I just posted a socialist dictionary earlier today. I've got some more stuff coming this week. So I do try to just break things down. I post clips from some of the stuff that we watch so you can share it out. And also, we are working on a big propaganda project right now in my supporter Discord. So tomorrow, I will be sending out a newsletter that gives you access to the supporter Discord. So you can sign up tonight, get access to it tomorrow. And we also do movie night at 8 p.m. in my supporter Discord. And so we'd love to have you there if you want to be a part of it. Oh, look, I just got a complaining comment in my chat. Oh, never mind. Anyway, let's keep going.
Made fun of it, but also liked it. And you're right that Ari Bonias we forgot in this, we fixed it for the next printing, but we forgot to include the poetics note that Ari Bonias's poems are all taken from, they're all using words that are taken from the transsexual empire, including its dedication to Adrienne Rich. But so, you know, just to talk a little bit about that essay by Bryn, I mean, one of the things I do think, Jules, that you're right to say that this relationship is like it's like melancholic in the sense that, you know, we're all trying to figure out, and we haven't found a solution for this like deep kind of like social and political disconnect, never mind the actual antagonism, but this desire to put people into conversation who are either not occupying the same time, or if they are, they're deeply distrustful of each other. And this, it seems important for us in part because, and actually, you know, like in part because the second wave can be so reduced in memory to just a kind of like way for us to go like, oh, this is some stuff that we don't like, without like really sitting with it and really understanding, you know, like even stuff in there that we might not like, Firestone or whoever, like people who are a little bit in outer space, but like it's worth reading, it's worth dealing with, and it's worth understanding the particular polemics that they undertook as we undertake our own, in part so that we don't believe ourselves to be doing new work when in fact we're not. Yeah, that's one thought that I have about the second wave and about radical feminism.
Okay, so now we've just opened the door to radical feminism. Is the turn of abolition. If there is one slogan that does the honors of left-wing transphobia and a place that has been like intellectually colonized by it, is that of the so-called abolition of gender. All of us, from enriching different perspectives,
Abolition
have
of
immersed
gender?
in our theoretical and political work in the argument of abolition. I think that communist thought can.
Am I friends with Michael Malice? No, I've had friendly conversation. I met Michael Malice a couple of years ago, and he was perfectly lovely, and we had a great conversation, and I enjoyed him very much. And I think Michael Malice is extraordinarily smart. I'm actually intimidated by how smart he is. Would I consider us friends? No, but he's a really nice guy, and I enjoyed the time I spent with him.
Contribute to this debate with one specific key, and it is that of substituting a radical feminist concept of abolition with Marxian concept of Aufhebung that leans towards a more expansive project, also in the face of gender nihilist negative project. And there are different approaches through which trans radical thinkers have grasped said abolition. For instance, on the one hand, Jules echoed the anti-carceral struggle by pointing to the need and focus the material conditions upon which gender division instead of prisons are built. Kay called for the abolition of gender abjection, I guess in the line of Rosemary.
Mike, if I were to start you off with a reading list, definitely read my book. I stand by everything in the book, but understand that I wrote the book in 2021 and like early 2021, and I've learned a lot since then. The book still holds up great. It's a great introduction. But what I would say, Mike, if you really want to start out, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to my Substack. And I want you to go to How to Speak Socialist up at the top. And at the very top of How to Speak Socialist, you're going to find the on-demand class called How to Speak Socialist. And this is a video, and it's literally just embedded in the post. And you can watch the class, and you can download the PowerPoint and stuff like that. So this is where I would start. And there's a bunch of stuff on this Substack. And so I would dig into the Substack and start reading there. And we appreciate how, and come to the streams, come to as many streams as you want. Again, I stream 6 days a week, unless I cancel it for some reason or another. But generally speaking, I stream 6 days a week. And come and ask questions and hang out. And honestly, Mike, the very best way to learn this stuff is to do immersive, just like sitting here and watching it. This is how I learned. This is how most people in the chat learned. And so, you know, I'm trying to come up with ways to break things down and make it easier for people because I know it's a lot. But just come and hang out with us and we'll teach you. And I appreciate your willingness to learn because I know it's not easy. And I know it's a lot. It's very blackpilling and a lot of people give up. But we have fun and we drink beer and we joke around and stuff like that too. So
Hennessy's point, but foster liberatory possibilities in maintaining gendered aesthetic pleasures and expressions. Although argues that gender can be abolished while preserving the rights and dignities of people to identify however they like, but while destroying it.
Hang on. What did they just say? Gender can be abolished while still preserve. Okay, everyone needs to, no more joke. Bill, stop fucking talking about the human fucking centipede. No more joking right now. What this person is saying is that gender can be abolished while still preserving the rights of people to identify however they want. I need everyone, I know we're getting late in the presentation, okay? But I need people to listen to this.
Although argues that gender can be abolished while preserving the rights and dignities of people to identify however they like, but while destroying its role in the organization of economic life. I myself have claimed previously that gender abolition implied the collective organization to overcome the material conditions that determine gender identities in the capitalist mode of production, thus socially immiserating the lives of gender-variant people and women. So, how do you think that trans liberation should approach set call for gender abolition? And above all, how can we as communists reframe its bourgeois and transphobic conclusions?
Bourgeois. Look at the spelling of bourgeois.
I mean, I think that abolition is a great communist word. And it's one that Marx, I mean, as Aufhebung, and actually Alberto Toscano has talked about this, and I think that there is another word for abolition that Marx uses, and I can't remember what it is. But Toscano talked about abolition communism, which I think is like really worth dwelling with. But also, you know, like one of the things that it's translated as abolition in Marx is Aufhebung. So the kind of cancellation and negation and transformation of conditions so that this thing that is contained in a certain dimension becomes variously redistributed, so it's a great communist word, and we can use it. I guess maybe one of the responses that I have here is I want to draw out the other sense of abolition that I think many of us use it right now. The other sense of abolition that many of us use right now, and try to think about the non-identity between this sense of abolition and general abolition, and I mean prison and police abolition, which is the bulk of my organizing work now and has been for a while, and which is, you know, abolitionist in the sense that it aims at the transformation of social conditions.
Hang on, we're going to get back to that in a second. We're going to go to Dragon Tail. FYI, I'm not on X, so I sent you an email, the question I asked on HH, abortion storytellers in the classroom and what I'm trying to find out. Thank you for not quitting. I was scared. I really was going to quit in December. I'm not even joking about that. People thought I was fronting. I was done. I'll get to that. I'll get to that. I promise. And again, it's like a really good question what you asked, and it's something I do want to look into. And I promise I will get to it. I appreciate you, Dragon Tail. Thank you so much. But I'm not going to quit now. Listen. I may have had an existential crisis at the end of last year, but now I'm thoroughly and completely convinced that there is no possible way I can quit, because not because I don't want to, but because what I'm doing is actually kind of important and it's different, and I understand that. And I know I can't fucking quit even though I want to, okay?
So that prisons and police no longer provide a bad answer or a false answer to
happy hour,
hunger, trauma, crisis, chaos, and need. On the understanding that these are forms of class war in the present that produce and reproduce forms of racial dispossession.
What? It's true. My forbidden internet romance with Big Tech gave me a second win. It's true. Well, you guys should see the DM conversation between us right now, because like he's like, he's trying to convince me of the true origins of all of this, and I'm like, give me some evidence, bro. And he's like, trust me, Carlin. And he's like, okay. So he and I are having a very interesting DM back and forth right now. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah, it's all Nick Fuentes' fault. I was on a rebound. All right, everyone focus. Yeah, exactly. Source, trust me, bro. I can't say what he thinks on YouTube, because I might get my channel banned if I say what he thinks on YouTube. So he's giving me stuff to look at, or he's thinking, I don't even know if he's going to, but like, anyway, Big Tech is working very hard on convincing me of something that he wants to convince me of. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I can't confirm or deny. All right, we're moving on now.
In what sense is that an abolition?
Exactly. Oy vey.
When we say abolition, what do we mean? Well, we actually do mean like sublation, not subtraction. Like we actually do mean Aufhebung in this sense of like understanding that these things perform through the means of pacification, control, severe violence, apartheid. They actually have these social functions, you know. Prisons in the US are massive providers of mental health care. Like that's fucked up. The world should not be this way, but it's true, right? So prisons have this social reproductive function, right? So when we say abolition.
Wait, did you just hear that? Prisons have a social reproductive function? Why do you think they want to abolish prisons? Prisons have a social reproductive function. Mike, I welcome anyone asking good questions. I will be here as long. I've gone for hours on this stuff, bro, so don't worry about it. You're asking great questions. You have good motives. Like, you're welcome here. Ask as many questions as you like. Prisons, well, yeah, I mean, but this is actually important, right? Because the family is not the only thing that socially reproduces. School to prison pipelines. Socialists want to abolish all prisons. They want to abolish all police. They want to abolish all prisons. Let's listen again.
Healthcare. Like that's fucked up. The world should not be this way, but it's true, right? So prisons have this social reproductive function, right? So when we say abolition, we mean that function can be done in a way that we can get rid of this institution and do it otherwise, right? And so we are talking about like negating, canceling, and transforming these social relations so that no longer has to happen. But also like what the object, even though we have these kind of increments that we can identify as being part of our strategy to produce a different world, the object that we're actually abolishing, which is to say transforming, is social relations. And that is the sense in which
the object that we're really abolishing, and that is to say transforming, is social relations. Yo, let's listen to that again.
Use a different world. The object that we're actually abolishing, which is to say transforming, is social relations. And that is the sense in which I think this kind of like prison and police abolition lines up with gender abolition, which I think we mean in a slightly different sense. Because at least when I say that, and I only sometimes say that because people get very confused about it, but I don't mean it in the sense, I mean, if we're kind of going back to that definition that I was using earlier, and that might not be a helpful definition, but I find it sometimes a helpful definition of gender as the subjective imprint of the symbolization of sexual difference, then, you know, like this thing where like, you know, where some people are e-girls and some people are daddies, you know, like that's not a bad thing, right? That's fine. The massive, again, scalar consigning of some people to massive to exploitation and abjection and violence in massive degrees, that is the object of transformation, right? That is the thing that cannot exist in the world that we want to make. And so I think it's important for us to kind of understand and to pull these things apart, understanding that how people like, you know, let's say joyously or abundantly experience their embodiment will also change when it is no longer the case that like the household and other forms of like say privatized forms of care, social reproduction, care for
Privatized
children,
forms
care
of
for
care.
elders, when these things no longer, when, I will say, speaking that into the world, when these things no longer structure our lives,
the household, other privatized forms of care. Let's listen again. When these things no longer structure our lives, because remember, guys, these people want to eliminate all private property. So they think that the nuclear household is a form of private property. They think that healthcare is a form of private property. That's why they're talking about universal healthcare. Universal healthcare comes from these people. They want everything to be public. They want everything to be collectivized. Every time you hear them talk about collective care, that means universal healthcare. And when they say universal healthcare, they mean everything. They mean you will have on-demand access to whatever trans-affirming surgery you want at any time. You will have on-demand access to any abortion that you want at any time. They mean all mental health care, everything. No private doctors, no private medical insurance. Everything is provided and paid for by the state. Listen again. If you want a third leg, then you can get a third leg. Well, they're going to enslave everyone. Everyone. Not just the doctors, not just the carpenters. Everyone.
Embodiment will also change when it is no longer the case that, like, the household and other forms of, like, say, privatized forms of care, social reproduction, care for children, care for elders, when these things no longer, when, I will say, speaking that into the world, when these things no longer structure our lives, like, surely people will also have different, like, ways that they want to, like, I don't know, go about what they do in the ways that we now, like, talk about as gender. Like, that's definitely true. But also, again, like, you know, what we are aiming at is this relationship, and that's what I have to say.
I've got a brief answer, but I'll let Al go first if she wants to say anything.
No, I'm good.
Well, concerning all the things we want to abolish, yeah, I guess, like, concerning prisons and law enforcement and all that, I found this formulation in the introduction of We Want It All, where it's like the kind of poetics that these people are sort of involved in are like the opposite of a prison. I thought was this really memorable way of putting it, which yeah, I think I'll be thinking about. And it seems really obvious to me that in the US, like, a lot of revolutionaries who maybe don't call themselves communists or anarchists or whatever have taken to calling themselves abolitionists. Like, that's their primary identifier.
True.
And I find that very striking. Obviously, it's to do with the US specific history there, and previously successful movements to get rid of slavery. But, like, something I have noticed as well is that there's this real admirable clarity with many of the leading figures. I'm thinking especially about Ruth Wilson Gilmore, but there are many other examples to kind of emphasize that when they're talking about
Ruth Wilson Gilmore. What is Ruth Wilson Gilmore famous for? What is Ruth Wilson Gilmore famous for? Come on. You all damn well should know the answer to this if you've been around a couple of weeks. What is Ruth Wilson Gilmore famous for? No, not the 1619 Project. Ruth Wilson Gilmore, not prison abolition. Nope. What does racial capitalism mean? What does racial capitalism mean again? What does racial capitalism mean? Ruth Wilson Gilmore is famous for talking about racial capitalism. Racial capitalism means exploiting people of color for the benefit of capitalism. Exploiting people of color for the benefit of capitalism. Exploiting people of color to benefit capitalism. Exactly. You guys will never, ever, 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 ever forget the definition of racial capitalism, will you? Well done.
Abolition. We're not thinking about like some kind of storming the Bastille moment that's going to happen across the nation, and then all the walls will come tumbling down, and that's it. All the prisoners are freed, and hooray, happy ending. And it's more about like, it's more about supplanting and replacing, and exactly like acknowledging, as Kay was saying, that these like law enforcement agents are kind of being called upon to like resolve mental health crises and stuff like that. So it's like we're going to have to work out new ways to do all of those things, and ways to like replace all of this stuff and like repair the harm, like a reparative process as much as a destructive one. And like it's not going to succeed without both of those aspects, right? Like you have to be prepared to involve in literal physical struggles in places, and you need to be prepared to do work which is maybe even more difficult than that at other times. So yeah, that's kind of like US abolitionism thing, which I find very, very inspiring and very admirable. Although I will say that like in Europe, there's maybe like a widespread unfamiliarity, even on the left, with even some of the basic insights of those Black feminists and other Black movement struggles. So yeah, but concerning the term, like, yeah, I'm not even sure like I'm into gender abolition. I wrote these 2 essays about it in Blindfield journal, which I think was primarily just to record the fact that people were making this opposition that like radical feminists talk about gender abolition, and trans people don't do that because it invalidates people or whatever, which is of course a load of nonsense. Like there's been loads of very interesting gender abolitionist writing by trans people, which I tried to kind of like engage with and thread together a bit, especially in the second part of the essay. But again, it's like when you say you want to abolish something, like the agenda you're setting out is always like, well, you're trying to say that the way the world is configured, the way the world is set up now, it doesn't have to be
Just
the case.
10 minutes,
and it
Mike. We're almost done. We're almost done. Hang in there, bro.
It doesn't have to be the
We're
case
good.
for the rest of time.
5
so
minutes.
Like, when you're
5
talking
minutes.
about abolishing prisons, when you're talking about abolishing the family, or the wage relation, or landlords, or whatever else, you're basically you're sketching out a picture about how the world can look. You're saying, well, people shouldn't have to be spending most of their time.
This is actually a good question. Hang on. Janet says, have in any of these videos in the last year and a half talked about money? I assume they won't need any. Will we just show up at the place? Yeah, they want to build a society in which we don't use money. Literally. I mean, they're teaching this to kids in elementary school in UCLA, in the UCLA School of Education. They're teaching kids that we won't need bankers, and we won't need money in the future socialist utopia. So they don't think we're going to need it. Because in a world built on equity, everyone will have everything they need.
Earning money to pay the bills, or trying to find a job to earn money to pay the bills, and they can't even find one. You know what I mean? This is like, the point is always like the utopian, or the point is always showing people that are engaged in these struggles that like it's not going to be that way forever, or it doesn't have to be. So like that's the purpose of talking in terms of abolition, I would say. And it's always possible to get caught up in people talking about whether this is realistic, or whether like you have a clearly articulated plan, or whether like the movement is really capable of like replacing all these roles and fulfilling all these social needs and stuff. But like that's why I would stick with it. That's why like I think it's worth talking about abolitionist communism or anything like that. Yeah, I try and be practical, I suppose. All right, I think that's the end of me.
Just to be super quick there, I mean, yeah, like I love this sense of abolition as bearing out what Badiou calls the communist hypothesis, that this world is not necessary, or, you know, like we do not have to live this way, and to identify what those things are, which we were like, we don't have to live this way.
Okay, so is it time for you to leave, Kay?
I do have to go, but Elle, if there's anything you would like to add, I can stick around for it.
No, I'm good.
Beautiful.
So yeah, what we can do is like pause this video.
All right, I guess that's it.
Is it already paused?
Okay, I guess we're done. We made it. All right, guys, congratulations. You made it through another thrilling week of Socialism Saturday. As a reminder, we do this every week on Saturday at 6 p.m. Now, tomorrow, I will be sending out a newsletter on my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. That looks a little bit like this, the Unwoke Roundup email. This is this week's email, so there'll be a different one tomorrow. And what I need everyone to do when they get this email is scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath this red box here, when you are a supporter on the Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year, you will get access to a variety of perks. That includes 2 Zoom calls with me every single week. They are private, they are unrecorded. It includes access to the supporter Discord. It includes 10% off in the Unwoke Art merchandise store. We are doing movie night tomorrow at 8 p.m. We're watching Roxanne, I think. We're watching a love movie that Jennifer picked out, okay? We do movie nights every Sunday, or Sunday, I think I said Saturday. We do movie nights every Sunday at 8 p.m. in the supporter Discord. So come join us for movie night tomorrow. If you don't like this week's movie, just hang out. We'll do another movie next week. We watch movies every single week. We do trivia, we do music, stuff like that. It's a really fun time. Those are some of the supporter perks you get in the Discord. And as a reminder, you can currently get bots, 4 goals of the woke left design in the Unwoke Art store for 25% off for the next week only, or until we hit the month of February. So make sure you pick up your merch. It's fucking awesome. Maybe, I can't guarantee, maybe I want to go on a date with my husband too, ladies. Maybe I want to go to the martini bar and I want to get some $1 oysters on Sunday, okay? Maybe I want to do other stuff. Maybe I want to have a life for once. You ever think of that? All right. We'll see. All right, guys, that's all we've got for tonight. Take care, and we'll see you soon.